Tonight, we stand at the edge of a quiet field in the heart of Kansas, where the sky stretches wider than your thoughts and the soil is still damp from last night's dreams. The air is soft, still cool before the heat of the day wakes up. Crickets whisper in the grass, and a sleepy breeze rustles through rows of young corn just beginning to lift their heads toward the sun. You're not rushing. There's no need. The farm isn't in a hurry, and neither are you. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there, whether you're in a city apartment, a desert cabin, or under soft sheets by the sea. Now, dim the lights for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You showed up at the farm before the birds did. Maybe it was the insomnia, or maybe it was something deeper. Something about being tired of answering the same questions and craving the kind of silence that doesn't ask anything of you. And here, in the hush just before sunrise, you find exactly that. There's no noise out here, just space. The kind that doesn't press in. The kind that lets you unfold. The field is sleeping in rows, pale stalks lined up like monks in meditation, each one new, tender, fragile. You walk between them, feeling the dew soak through your socks. And for once, it's not uncomfortable, it's just true. Just another condition, nothing more. The farmer, Old Buckley, handed you a rusted tin coffee mug this morning, without saying much. The steam curled up like a ghost between you, and he only nodded toward the open barn door. No long list of chores, no clipboard, just a glance that said, "You'll know what needs doing." And somehow, you did. You wandered toward the fence line first, not because it was broken, but because something about those crooked posts, leaning into the morning light, made you feel human again. One was covered in moss like soft green velvet. Another had a crow perched on top, black, glistening, oddly still. You stood there watching it until it blinked and flew away, left without explanation. You'd forgotten how much peace there was in things that don't explain themselves. Buckley says it all starts with watching, not fixing, not planting, not even planning. Just standing still long enough to notice what's already happening. He calls it farm zen, but you're starting to think it might be something older than that, like the way rivers wear down stone without ever meaning to. So you do as he says. You watch the morning arrive like it's a slow story being told by the land itself. First, the frost melts off the truck's hood. Then the sun touches the tops of the corn leaves, making them shimmer like a silver prayer. A jackrabbit dashes through the tall grass, its heart beating loud as thunder in your chest. And through it all, you just breathe, not to change anything, not to quiet the world, just to be part of it. For once. This is your first lesson in the field. The world is already awake. You're just catching up. You crouch near the edge of the tilled row, fingers brushing over the dirt like it's a page you can read. It's not just soil, it's memory. It remembers floods, droughts, footsteps, seeds. It remembers hands that held it long before yours did. And still, it holds you too. There's a beetle crawling between two clods of earth. You watch it for a full minute, maybe longer. And in that minute, you feel something inside you soften. A kind of breath that doesn't belong to your lungs. A kind of time that doesn't care about clocks. And that's when you get it. Nothing out here is asking you to be anything else. Not better, not braver, not more efficient. The corn doesn't care if you believe in yourself. The breeze doesn't ask what your 5-year plan is. Even the sun rises without needing applause. Out here, you're allowed to be, not as an idea, not as a self-improvement project, just as breath and bones and seeing eyes. And maybe that's what you came for. You sit down on the step of the old grain shed as the light gets warmer. The wood beneath you is worn smooth by years of bodies heavier than yours. You imagine all of them farmhands, lovers, runaways pausing here to feel the world spin around them, slow and unnoticed. There's a rustle in the corn, and a swallow lifts off into the sky. You watch it disappear into the blue, like a thought you don't need to follow. So you stay. And the day begins, not because you started it, but because it was always going to begin, with or without you. You drink the last of your coffee. It's gone lukewarm, but it still tastes honest. And somehow, that's enough. The tractor wouldn't start this morning. Not the shiny red one with the good brakes and smooth steering. No, that one's still in the shop. You had the old John Deere, the green beast with the broken choke and the stubborn engine that coughs like it's clearing its throat from 100 years ago. You turn the key. Nothing. Again. Just a groan. Again. Still nothing. Buckley doesn't say a word. He just keeps sipping his coffee, watching you through the steam. There's a look on his face, not exactly judgment, but not help either. A kind of spiritual shrug that says, "Welcome to the lesson." He doesn't believe in rushing machines, or people, or days. So you stop turning the key. You sit there in the cracked leather seat and look out across the pasture. And the morning sits with you. You both breathe. The birds don't mind the delay. Neither does the corn. You realize you've been holding your breath since you climbed up here. Heart clenched like the engine, waiting for something to work the way you want it to. But that's not how anything works out here. You let out the breath slowly. Place your hand on the steering wheel like it's a meditation bell. No horn, no signal, just a circle meant to guide you. If you're willing to be led, eventually, you try again. Not out of frustration, but curiosity. This time, the engine sputters once, then roars. It catches on its own time, not yours. Funny how things move when you stop trying to force them. You pull the machine out toward the lower fields. The path is bumpy. Dust rises behind you like forgotten thoughts. You drive slow, not because you're lazy, but because you don't want to miss anything. You start to see the zen in it. The tractor becomes your breath. Forward, forward, pause, turn, straighten, forward again. It's like walking meditation, except the walking's done by gears and gas. You remember something Buckley muttered once: the tractor knows where the ground is harder than it looks. You didn't understand it then. Now, after a morning of tiny bumps and lurches, you get it. The field has its own hidden rhythms. Under the soft topsoil lies rock, root, memory. You feel them all through the wheels. And that's when you realize something big. Out here, you're not in charge. Not of the tractor, not of the crop, not even of yourself. Really. The farm is the teacher. You're just the student with mud on your boots and dust on your forehead, trying to understand the curriculum one row at a time. Midway through the ride, the sun climbs higher. Heat gathers. Sweat pools at the back of your neck, drips down your shirt. You don't wipe it away. You let it come, like a truth surfacing. You stop to fill the tank and stretch your arms. You lean back against the trailer and close your eyes for just a moment. Behind your eyelids, the buzzing of flies, the whisper of the wind, the slow tick of cooling metal. You are here, and nothing else needs to be. The lesson of the tractor is simple, but not easy. Nothing will go faster than it's ready to. And more importantly, that's perfectly fine. A hawk circles above. You follow its shadow as it glides over the corn. It's not hunting, just floating, letting the thermals do the work. You think of how many years you've spent paddling upstream against time. Deadlines, alarms, countdowns. Now the only clock you follow is the one inside your chest, and it's finally slowing down. There's a part of you, deep down, that still wants to push, still wants to get things done. But the field doesn't care how efficient you are. The tractor certainly doesn't. And Buckley, well, he hasn't moved an inch. He's sitting by the barn door with a book he's not reading, just holding. Like the act of holding still is the reading. So you turn the tractor off, let the silence return, and in that hush, you hear something unexpected. You don't miss the noise. You don't miss the hurry. In fact, you feel lighter. You lean your head against the seat back and let the engine tick as it cools down. It's not much, this moment, but somehow it feels like enough. And enough is rare. When you finally step down, your boots hit the dirt with a soft thud. You brush your hands off on your jeans, not to clean them, just to feel something solid, something here. You walk back slowly. There's no deadline, just a sun that's still climbing and a sky that keeps opening. The wind picks up again, gentler this time, almost like a pat on the back. And you smile, because the tractor taught you more than how to drive. It taught you how to wait. The kitchen smells like cornbread and old pine, the kind of wood that holds memory in its grains, grooves worn into the table by elbows, cards, and decades of farmhands hunched over morning coffee, all watching the sun rise like it owed them something. You step inside, and it's cooler here, not cold, just shaded. Still, you pour water from the tin pitcher into a glass that looks like it's been around since Roosevelt. The first Roosevelt? The dog doesn't lift its head from the doorway. It knows the rhythm of the day better than you do. You sit, take a sip, and listen. The silence isn't empty. It's full of the creak of beams, the faint hum of cicadas outside, the distant clink of a wind chime swaying like it's bowing to something older than wind. You reach for the notebook Buckley gave you, the one with the soft cover and pages that whisper when turned. He told you it wasn't for notes, not for tasks. This one's just for noticing. He said, handing it to you without a smile, but with something better, a kind of slow respect. You open to a fresh page. The pen glides, and you find yourself writing without thinking. Just sounds, textures, little flickers of thought that don't want to be named yet. Corn leans east. Dog sighs. Bread still warm. You don't judge it. This isn't poetry, or maybe it is. It's not for publishing. It's for anchoring. You're not trying to say something. You're trying to see. And seeing is a kind of zen, all its own. Later that day, Buckley hands you a hoe. He doesn't give instructions, doesn't need to. The weeds in the southern row are instructions enough. Their green defiance against the gold of the corn is loud in a quiet kind of way. You walk to the row, raise the hoe, and begin. Slice, step, breathe. Slice, step, breathe. It's not fast, it's not clean. Your arms ache before you've made it halfway down. But then something shifts, not in your muscles, in your mind. You stop fighting the repetition and start listening to it. The rhythm becomes a lullaby. The wind picks up. It combs through the stalks like a monk sweeping a temple courtyard, gentle, precise, eternal. You keep moving. The sweat trickles down your spine. You don't wipe it away. It belongs. Halfway through the second row, a memory floats up. You, in a different life, tapping your phone, scrolling through someone else's joy, someone else's lunch, someone else's version of presence. You feel the ache of that old habit, the way it filled time without nourishing it. Here, there's no Wi-Fi, just wind, just weeds, just this. Slice, step, breathe. At one point, you look up. The field stretches in every direction, and for a second, you lose all sense of yourself as a separate being. You're not a farmhand, not a city escapee, not even someone doing Zen. You're just part of the pattern, just a moving shape in a bigger stillness. And it feels okay, more than okay. You pause at the end of the row, lean on the handle, feel the heartbeat in your palms. The corn is taller here. It casts a narrow strip of shade, and you let it fall across your face, not as shelter, but as gift. You start to understand what Buckley meant when he said, "Let the land teach you how to sit." You thought he meant rest, but now you think he meant witness. And what's blooming out here, just under the surface, is a witnessing so wide it doesn't need interpretation. It just is. Later, under the shade of the porch, Buckley hands you a slice of cornbread, still warm from the cast iron. He doesn't ask what you learned, doesn't tell you what he thinks. He just sits, slowly peeling the label off a glass bottle of root beer like it's a koan. You take a bite. The bread is dense and sweet, but it's the crust you remember, the edge, where heat met dough and changed it forever. Like the day did to you. Buckley finally speaks. "You ever watch corn grow?" he asks. You shake your head. He leans back, eyes half-lidded like he's seeing something you're not. "Don't bother trying," he says. "It's not about seeing it happen. It's about knowing it's happening while you wait." You smile, because now you get it. Growth isn't always visible, but that doesn't mean it's not unfolding, inch by sacred inch, under sun and sky and the steady patience of earth. And maybe that's what you're doing too. Slice, step, breathe, wait, morning again, a little earlier than before. You hear it before you see it, the low moo of a cow, the cranky creak of the barn door, and Buckley's boots on gravel. You're up before the rooster this time. That alone feels like progress. There's something about these pre-sunrise hours. The world is holding its breath. Even the cornfields seem unsure whether to stretch or stay curled up in the dew. You pull on your worn jacket and step outside, the cool air brushing your skin like a question. The barn smells like hay and old stories. Inside, Buckley is already tending to the cow. He doesn't look up, just mutters, "Grab the bucket." You do. No questions. You're learning. The milking process is awkward. Your hands don't know the rhythm. But the cow is patient, or maybe just indifferent. She's seen worse. Her breath steams in the cold, rising like incense, slow and holy. There's something meditative about it. The soft tug, the warmth of the pail, the gentle slosh of fresh milk. You settle into a rhythm, and time stops trying to move in straight lines. It curves. It rests. Buckley watches without watching. That's his way. He trusts the process more than the result. When the pail is half full, he finally speaks. Still keeping that notebook? You nod. What did you notice yesterday? You think for a second, then say, corn leans east. He grunts. It's approval, or at least not disapproval. That's true, he says. But what's it mean? You hesitate. That the sun rises in the same place. That the plants remember. Buckley smiles without moving his face. You're learning. You clean up the barn in silence. It's not really work. It's movement with purpose. You begin to understand the difference. Later that day, he sends you to the far field. The one with the irrigation ditch. You walk the fence line, checking for breaks. It's not glamorous, but it's necessary. The wind is strong here, carrying the scent of dry earth and cedar. The ditch hums faintly. There's life in it, frogs, dragonflies, the occasional bubble of a snapping turtle just beneath the surface. You sit under a tree for a moment, watching the water move. It's slow, not lazy, just deliberate. The stream doesn't rush. It doesn't try to prove anything. It simply flows, bending around rocks, absorbing sunlight, carving its path not by force, but by presence. You remember a Zen saying you once read, "Water flows because it does not resist." You wonder how many hours of your old life were spent resisting discomfort, boredom, people, yourself. Here, resistance seems foolish, like yelling at the sky for being too blue. You write in the notebook, frog waits. Water accepts. Tree doesn't mind. It's not profound, but it's honest. You spend an hour just sitting, and for the first time, you don't feel guilty for not doing something. You are doing something. You think about the Eightfold Path, one of the few Buddhist teachings you halfway remember. Right effort, right mindfulness, right livelihood. You never understood what right meant. Now you think it doesn't mean perfect or correct. Maybe it just means aligned. You head back before dusk. Buckley is on the porch, sharpening a blade with slow, deliberate strokes. He doesn't ask where you've been. He knows. He jerks his head toward the rocker beside him. You sit. He offers you a peach. It's not quite ripe. You bite anyway. It's tart. Honest. You ever think about quitting, you ask? Buckley doesn't look up. Quitting what, everything? You say. He finally glances over. I quit all the time. He says, I just don't stop. That one sits with you. He puts the knife down, wipes it on his jeans. Thing about a farm, he says, is it teaches you slow truths. Not the kind that slap you in the face. The kind that settle in your bones. You nod. Not because you fully get it, but because you're starting to. He adds, you can't watch corn grow, but you can notice when it's taller. And there it is again, that lesson wrapped in dirt and dust and wind. Growth isn't about catching it in the act. It's about knowing it's happening while you're busy living. Later, after supper, you walk the field. The moon is low, caught in the branches like it forgot how to rise. You look at the corn. It's quiet, taller, maybe, Or maybe you're just seeing it differently. You pause and take out your notebook. The pages smell faintly of cedar and ink. You write, "Night carries secrets the sun doesn't need to explain." You don't read it back. Don't judge it. Just tuck it away like a seed. Tomorrow will come. The sun will rise. The ditch will hum. And you'll still be here slightly changed. Not because of effort, but because of presence. The morning comes again, not like a surprise, but like an old friend tapping gently at your window. You wake to the sound of crows in the distance, their calls echoing across the empty sky. There's something mischievous about them, like they know more than they let on. You stretch, bones cracking like wood warming in a hearth, and sit up slowly. The air is crisp and smells faintly of earth and metal, a reminder that even the sky changes clothes each day. Buckley isn't on the porch this time. The rocker sits still, and the door creaks slightly in the wind. You find a note on the table in his barely legible scrawl. "Fix the fence by the east field." Take your time. Look around. That last part is underlined. So, you grab your gloves and the rusty toolbox and start the walk across the property. The fence isn't far, but the path curves like it has opinions. Every few feet, something asks for your attention. A gopher trail collapsing underfoot, a hawk perched on a fence post, a cluster of wildflowers that somehow escaped the mower's judgment. When you reach the east field, the damage is obvious. A section of wire has collapsed, the posts leaning like tired soldiers. You crouch beside it, running your fingers along the warped metal. You don't rush. You just look. Let your body match the tempo of the day. This is new. The old you would have attacked the fence like it was an enemy. Now you see it as a story, a little weathered chapter of the farm's long biography. You set the tools down and get to work slowly. There's rhythm in repair, the sound of hammer on wood, the pull of wire, the way sweat gathers and disappears without asking permission. Time becomes slippery. You lose the need to check it. While working, you notice the ants nearby, hundreds of them, navigating around a rock, carrying bits of grass like flags. They don't complain. They just adjust. You envy them a little. You remember another Zen story, something about a monk who swept leaves every day, even in the middle of autumn. When asked why, he said, "Because the leaves keep falling. It makes more sense now." You finish the repairs as the sun climbs its way to the middle of the sky. You sit in the shade of an old elm tree, chest rising and falling like the land itself. Out here, silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of everything else. You write in the notebook, "Ants don't blame the rock. They just find a way." You close your eyes, and for a few breaths, you're not thinking, not analyzing or narrating. You're just part of the field, as much as the fence, or the ants, or the elm. Later, Buckley joins you. He doesn't ask how it went, just lowers himself onto the grass beside you with the grace of someone who gave up impressing people decades ago. He offers you a slice of bread and butter wrapped in a handkerchief. You both eat in silence. After a while, he nods toward the repaired section of fence. "That'll do." He pauses, then adds, "It won't last forever." Nothing does. You nod. He glances at you, then out across the field. You notice the way the corn changes color just before it ripens. You hadn't... It blushes, he says. Little tinge of gold, like it's embarrassed by how close it is to becoming something else. You smile. That sounds about right. You think about all the parts of yourself that might be blushing too. Edges softening, walls lowering. No trumpet fanfare, no sudden enlightenment. Just the slow, awkward turning towards something a little wiser. You write fence fixed, corn blushing. I might be too. That night, Buckley teaches you how to shell beans. It's monotonous and beautiful. The pods make a satisfying snap as they open. The beans spill into a tin bowl with a soft plink. Over and over, he tells you how his grandfather used to do this by lamplight while reciting koans under his breath. Not to solve them, just to sit with them. What's the sound of one hand clapping, he murmurs, shelling another pod. You try. Raise your hand and slap air. He chuckles. You're not supposed to answer. You're supposed to feel the not knowing. You laugh with him. The kind of laugh that makes your ribs feel less lonely. He says, you ever notice how we try to fix the fence outside, but never the one we keep building in our heads? You nod. That one hits a little deeper. Before bed, you walk out alone. The sky is full of stars, too many to count, but you try anyway. You sit in the middle of the field, hands brushing the corn leaves, which now reach your shoulders. They whisper to each other in a language you can almost understand. You breathe in, not to change anything, just to notice. That's becoming your real job now. Not fixing or solving, just noticing. You write shelling beans. Stripping ego. Corn blushes. Fences inside me bend in wind. You don't know if any of it will matter tomorrow, but tonight it does. And that's enough. You rise before dawn, not because you have to, but because some quiet part of you wants to. The air is cool, nearly blue, and the farm is still asleep, save for a few birds mumbling in their sleep like old men in rocking chairs. You pour a cup of weak coffee and sit on the porch, wrapped in an old wool blanket. It smells faintly of cedar and tobacco. The mug warms your hands. The steam curls like breath from a dreaming animal. The sun isn't visible yet, but the horizon glows like the farm is holding its breath. You realize something. You're no longer counting the days. There's no calendar in your head keeping track of how long you've been here. No countdown to when you'll leave. It's like the clock melted. Like Dali's painting time drooping over the fence posts and wheelbarrows. Buckley joins you just as the sky begins to crack open. He doesn't say good morning, just hands you a folded newspaper and points toward the chicken coop. Eggs won't gather themselves, and so you go. The hens regard you with suspicion. One pecks at your boot. You gather the eggs slowly, carefully, like you're cradling glass stars, each one warm, fragile, and a reminder that some things are both ordinary and miraculous at once. Back at the house, Buckley fries them in bacon grease while humming a hymn you don't recognize. He serves breakfast on chipped plates with mismatched forks. You eat together, quietly. The yolks run like sunrise across toast. Afterward, you ask if there's anything to fix today. Nope, he says. Today's for walking, so you go. You take the long path through the woods behind the east field, boots crunching over last year's leaves and this morning's dew. You let the trees lead you. Let the wind rearrange your thoughts. Halfway through the woods, you find an old stone well. It's covered in moss and ivy, and the bucket rope has snapped. You lean over the edge. It's deeper than you expect. so deep that sound doesn't echo, it just vanishes. You toss in a pebble. No splash, just silence. You wonder if the well is empty or simply quiet. Then you realize it doesn't matter. Either way, it holds something invisible. That's a kind of teaching. You sit beside the well and pull out your notebook. Not every depth gives back a sound. That doesn't mean it's not deep. You breathe. The silence here is heavier than at the house. Not oppressive, just thick, like wool soaked in memory. You stay a while. Long enough for a fox to cross your path and not care. When you return, Buckley's tending the garden. He doesn't ask where you went. He just says, "Feel any different?" You shrug. "I didn't think so." He nods. That's the trick. Most change doesn't feel like anything at first. It just accumulates quietly, like dust. Later, he asks if you want to help transplant seedlings. You say yes. He shows you how to loosen the roots without tearing them. How to dig with your fingers instead of a trowel. They like to feel hands. He says, each seedling seems terrified at first, dangling in the air, unsure of where it's going. But once it's in the ground again, it adjusts. No ceremony, just acceptance. You feel something loosen in your chest. After planting, you water each one gently. Don't drown them, Buckley says. Just remind them where the sky is. You write that down. Water. A sky reminder. We all need that sometimes. In the evening, a storm rolls in. You sit on the porch again, wrapped in that same old wool blanket, watching clouds tumble over the hills like slow waves. Lightning flashes somewhere far off. Buckley lights an oil lamp. The flame wavers, but doesn't go out. You ask him if storms ever scare him? Nah, he says. They're just the sky stretching. He leans back and sips his tea. Let it rain. The corn will grow faster. You stay out there a long time, letting the storm talk to you. You don't flinch when the thunder comes. You don't worry about getting wet. Instead, you close your eyes and let the wind rearrange you. Tomorrow will come. It always does. But tonight, the well is deep, the eggs are warm, and the seedlings are asleep in their new home. And so are you. The morning after the storm is strange, not silent, not loud, just saturated. Every surface gleams with leftover rain, the way glass does after it's been wept on. The dirt is soft enough to sink into, and everything smells like the underside of the world, rich, alive, vaguely electric. You stand barefoot in the field. Mud slips between your toes, and you don't mind. Your lungs stretch wider than usual, like they're drinking instead of breathing. Buckley waves from the barn. Feed came in. Together, you unload sacks from the back of a rattling truck. The sacks are heavier than they look, but Buckley makes it feel like a rhythm more than a chore. 1, 2, pivot. 1, 2, lift. You fall into the cadence of it, like you're part of a slow drum beat. Once the feed is stacked, he nods toward the pasture. Walk the fence. Make sure the storm didn't knock anything loose. So you do. The fence runs like a soft thread along the edge of the property, stitching field to forest. You trace it slowly, one hand dragging along the wooden posts, the other pocketing pebbles or twirling blades of wet grass. You pass a cluster of wild blackberries, not ripe yet, but promising. A dragonfly hovers in front of your face for a moment, too long, like it's reading your thoughts, and then zips off toward the creek. You follow. The creek is louder today, swollen from last night's rain. The water runs fast over smooth stones, and tiny whirlpools form in the eddies like spinning mirrors. You crouch down and stare into one. Your reflection looks different. Not older, not younger, just less certain, but softer. That's something. A frog watches you from the opposite bank. You nod politely. It does not respond. Back at the house, you find Buckley sitting on the porch with 2 glasses of sweet tea and a folded piece of canvas. "I figured," he says, handing you one, "we could build you a place out back. Something small, just yours." You blink. A place. He shrugs. Cabin. Shack. Little hermit hut. Whatever you want to call it. You sit down, overwhelmed, but not uncomfortable. Why he leans back? Because people who stay need space, and people who leave need a reason to return. He lets that hang in the air like a wind chime that's just been brushed. Construction starts that afternoon. It's not fancy. 4 posts, a tin roof, plank floor, no insulation, no plumbing, but it's yours. The act of building something is strangely intimate, like planting a future. You hammer nails and hold boards and measure lengths with an old tape that sticks and squeaks. Buckley does most of it, but only because he's quicker. You keep up as best you can. There's a kind of meditation in manual labor. You stop thinking in words. The mind gets quiet, like a pond undisturbed. After sunset, you both sit on the new step unfinished, still splintered, but solid beneath you. Buckley pulls out 2 sandwiches wrapped in wax paper. Dinner. You eat in silence. A few fireflies blink lazily in the tall grass. A coyote howls from very far away, like it's telling a bedtime story to its pups. You ask, "Do you build these for everyone?" He shakes his head. "Just the ones who stop watching the clock." Later, you lie in your sleeping bag in the half-finished hut. The ceiling is open to the stars. You can see Orion's belt, even though it's the wrong season. You don't fall asleep right away. Instead, you listen to the creak of the new wood, to the sigh of the earth cooling down, to your own heartbeat, slow and rhythmic, like the hoofbeats of a horse returning from a long ride. You think about all the places you've ever lived, all the beds you've ever slept in, all the mornings you've woken up not knowing where you were. And for the first time in a long time, you don't feel lost. You feel located, not in a place, but in yourself. That's new. That's sacred. That's what Buckley meant. The next morning, you wake with the birds. You brew coffee on a small tin burner and sip it while watching the mist peel away from the field like someone lifting a bedsheet. It's going to be a good day. Not because of anything you have to do, just because you're here. That's enough. You start calling it the Hermit's Hut. Not out loud. Not to Buckley, but in your own head. It sticks. The Hermit's Hut. A place that doesn't need a doorbell, or a key, or even walls that keep the world entirely out. Just a little shelter where your thoughts have room to breathe. Each morning, you sweep the plank floor with a pine branch you've tied together. Not because it needs it. There's barely any dust, but because the motion feels clean. Like bowing to the day before it begins. The corn is waist high now. You walk through it like a priest in a sacred grove, hands brushing gently over the stalks. ears tuning to the soft rustle of life in slow motion. Some of the leaves have started to curl inward, catching the light like scrolls made of green silk. The sun is higher today. The sky is cloudless, and the heat feels like a hand pressing down on everything. You work slower. That's fine. Slowness doesn't mean laziness. Buckley reminds you of that whenever he sees you hesitate. Turtles still get where they're going, he says, usually with a glass of lemonade in hand. Usually while not looking at you but off into some unseeable middle distance. That afternoon, you help him fix a gate. One of the hinges has come loose, and the wood is beginning to warp. You take it apart slowly, salvaging the nails that still have bite in them and sanding the ones that don't. There's a moment during the repair where everything goes still. Birds pause. The wind holds its breath. You are crouched with a hammer, staring at the grain of the wood like it holds a secret language. And then you hear it. Not words, not sound, just understanding. The grain tells you where not to strike, where it would split, where it would resist, and you adjust accordingly. Later, you try to describe this moment to Buckley, who nods like he's heard it before from someone else, years ago, maybe in another field, another life. He says, "That's what farmers call listening to the land." It sounds too poetic to be practical, but somehow it works. You spend more time in silence now, not because there's nothing to say, but because the space between words has grown wide enough to swim in. You sit under the oak tree some days and just watch the clouds perform their slow, aimless ballet. You try not to name them. Not cumulus or stratus, just shapes. Giant dreams sailing through the sky. One afternoon, a thunderhead rolls in, but no rain falls. Just shadow, cool and blue, stretching across the corn. You sit and watch, feeling like you've been granted an audience with a moody ancient god. Later that week, Buckley asks if you want to drive into town. You hesitate. It's been weeks. But something in his tone makes it feel like an invitation, not a test. So you say yes. The truck smells like gasoline and cracked vinyl. You roll down the window and let the wind slap your face, like it's trying to remind you that you're still part of the world beyond fence posts and feed sacks. Town is small. One main street, a diner, a post office, a feed store with a cat that doesn't move much. You sit at the counter of the diner with Buckley and order a sandwich you don't finish. You watch the people. Everyone moves faster here, even in a sleepy town. There's an undercurrent of impatience, not angry, just taut. You catch your own reflection in the silver napkin holder. You look softer. The edges of your face are blurred, like you've been sanded down gently by time and wind. Back on the farm that night, you sit on the stoop of the hermit's hut with a tin cup of hot tea. The moon is nearly full. The crickets sound like 1,000 monks chanting very slowly, very quietly, into the dark. You think about impermanence, how nothing lasts, not the weather, not the crops, not even the mood you're in. And instead of sadness, this thought brings a strange relief. You whisper, "Thank you," but you're not sure to what or who. Maybe just to the night, maybe to yourself. In the morning, you help Buckley with a sick goat. It's limping, and he shows you how to wrap the leg. You gotta move slow so it doesn't panic. He says, animals feel intention before they feel touch. That hits you harder than expected. Intention before touch. It applies to people, too. You wonder how many things you've touched with the wrong intention. The goat nuzzles your hand when you're done, like forgiveness, or maybe just affection. Hard to tell the difference when it's honest. You stay up late that night, staring at the stars again. You try to name them, but they don't need names. They just are. And so are you. It feels enough. No accolades. No achievements. Just breath and heartbeat and moonlight. And a quiet hut with a door that doesn't lock. Morning arrives, soft and gold. The kind of morning that doesn't rush you out of bed, but waits patiently outside the window, whispering, "I'm here when you're ready." You sit up slowly, stretch, and listen to the sound of dew sliding off the roof of the hermit's hut. There's a rhythm to it, like fingers tapping on hollow bamboo. You don't check the time. Time doesn't press you like it used to. Today, you help Buckley with fence mending. Miles of old wire strung between leaning posts. Most of them tired from decades of standing guard. The work is repetitive, but it's never quite the same. Some posts stand tall and proud. Others lean like drunks. The wire is rusted in places, tight in others, loose in most. You don't fight it, Buckley says. You listen, then you act. The words stick with you all morning. You say them in your head, over and over. You don't fight it. You listen, then you act. There's a kind of wisdom there you never read in a book. A Buddhist might call it mindfulness. Buckley just calls it common sense. Around midday, you stop to drink from your canteen. You lean against a fence post and close your eyes. The sun is warm on your face, and a breeze nudges the hairs on your arms. In that moment, nothing demands your attention. There's only the hum of insects, the gentle creak of wood shifting, and your own quiet breath. You think about dependent origination, not as a theory, but as a lived reality. That this fence exists because someone made it. That someone made it because they needed to keep something in or something out. That need arose from the animals, from the crops, from the land, from the cycle of seasons, from something deeper and older than all of them. And now here you are, part of that thread, touching it, repairing it. The thought comforts you. That afternoon, you and Buckley eat sandwiches on the tailgate of his truck. He doesn't say much, just hands you half, and chews slowly, eyes on the hills. You chew slower, too. Food tastes different when your body's tired in a good way, not exhausted, satisfied. You spot a hawk circling above the cornfield. Buckley watches it with you. Used to think that bird was a sign. He says, but it's just a bird. You nod. Then you add, and being just a bird might be enough. Buckley looks at you with a mix of surprise and approval. He doesn't reply. He doesn't have to. Later, you find yourself back at the hermit's hut. You kneel in the dirt, pulling weeds from the side of the foundation. Not because anyone told you to, just because it feels like the thing to do. The soil is warm beneath your fingers, and each weed slides out with a soft, reluctant tug. You pause when you reach a sprouting flower. Not planted, not expected, just there. You leave it. Not every surprise has to be removed. That evening, you build a small cairn behind the hut. A few stones stacked without cement, without purpose other than balance. You think about the eightfold path, right view, right intention, right speech, and the rest. You try not to force it, just feel your way. The stack holds steady, That night, Buckley lights a fire in the old pit near his back porch. You sit nearby, sipping tea, watching sparks lift like tiny prayers into the stars. He tells you about the time a twister came through and how he stayed in the barn with the animals because he figured they'd be more scared than he was. They needed calm, he says. So I gave it to them, even if I didn't have it. You nod. You understand that now. Sometimes, peace isn't something you have, it's something you offer, even when you're empty. Later, back in your hut, you write the word offering on the back of a seed packet, just to remember. The wind moves softly across the field. You lie on your back and stare at the ceiling, which is little more than a patchwork of timber and starlight. You breathe in, you breathe out. Each breath is a chapter in a book you no longer need to read. And yet, you understand more than ever. You fall asleep before you realize you've drifted, not into darkness, but into the soft hum of belonging. There's a fog when you wake, but not in your mind. Outside the hermit's hut, the cornfields are wrapped in a quiet mist. Rows disappear into the softness, like footsteps fading in snow. The world feels muffled, like it's still dreaming. You step out into it barefoot, your skin brushing against the dew-soaked earth. It's cold, but not biting, just enough to remind you you're alive. You carry your boots by the laces, not because you're trying to be symbolic, but because your souls want to feel the ground. Today is market day in the small town nearby. Buckley says you should come, not to buy anything, but to watch how people move. You can learn more from a crowded sidewalk than a whole month of sitting still, he says. You ride into town in his old truck, the cab smelling faintly of hay and coffee. The windows are down. Country radio hums low, but you don't listen to the words. You're more interested in the way the telephone wires swoop between poles, like notes in a silent song. The town is nothing fancy. A hardware store, a diner, a post office with peeling paint and a crooked flag. But the market is alive. People greet each other by name. Farmers sell tomatoes out of the backs of their pickups. Kids chase each other between produce stands. A woman hands you a sample of honey on a wooden stick, and you let it dissolve on your tongue. It tastes like sunshine, filtered through clover. You drift between stalls like a feather. At one stand, a man is selling ceramic bowls. Rough, simple, beautiful. You pick one up. It's slightly uneven. The glaze runs in places. The inside holds the memory of the potter's fingers. You buy it, not because you need it, but because it feels honest. Buckley grins when you show him. Good bowl, he says. That one doesn't lie. Back at the truck, you tuck it into a box of peaches someone gave you for helping them lift a crate. No payment asked. No thanks needed. Just kindness on the ride home. Buckley tells you about when he used to come here with his wife. She liked the soap ladies, he says. Bought one every week. We've still got drawers full of them. His voice doesn't crack. It softens. You don't ask where she is now. You just listen. You realize listening is harder in silence than it is in conversation. Because when someone says nothing, you have to open your heart a little wider to catch what they mean. That afternoon, you sit under the old elm tree behind the barn and hold the bowl you bought. You trace its rim slowly, again and again. You think about the story of the Japanese monk who drank from the same chipped teacup every day, not despite its imperfection, but because of it. Because the chip reminded him the cup wouldn't last forever. You wonder if your bowl will chip one day. You think about what that will teach you. Later, Buckley asks you to help stack hay in the loft. It's hot and dusty. Your arms itch. Your shirt sticks to your back. But you don't complain. There's a rhythm to the work, a pace. Every bale lifted becomes a breath. Every breath becomes a step. You stop once, halfway through, and stand with your hands on your hips, staring at a beam of light slicing through the boards. In it, dust dances like it has somewhere to be. You smile. Back in the hut, you place the bowl on the windowsill. Inside it, you drop a few petals from a dying flower. You're not trying to be poetic. It just feels right. That night, thunder rolls in the distance. You lie in bed, the air thick and electric. The storm hasn't arrived yet, but you can feel it stretching its limbs over the horizon. You think about karma, how every action leaves a trace, how even your smallest kindness today might echo later in someone else's laughter, how even a dropped seed could become a tree long after you're gone. You imagine the bowl catching raindrops. You imagine Buckley's drawer of soap bars. You imagine the hawk you saw the other day, still circling, still hunting, still being exactly what it is, and you just lying here doing the same. No effort, no agenda, just being. You sleep without trying, because sleep, like wisdom, comes best when it's not chased. You wake to the smell of rain on dry earth. That scent petrichor, though you don't remember who told you that, is as calming as Buckley's early morning humming. The storm came and went while you slept. Now, the world outside feels rinsed, like even the air had a chance to cry itself clean. You open the window of the hut. The bowl on the sill is half full of rainwater. One of the petals floats, barely alive. You watch it for a while, how it twitches with each breath of wind. It's not struggling. It's just being moved. And you think maybe that's all any of us are doing. The fields are quiet, but not silent. Worms have surfaced. Birds flutter across the branches like ideas. You lace your boots and step outside into the saturated hush. Buckley meets you near the fence. He's already been up, already done the hard work, and is now working on the thoughtful kind. His hands are covered in soil. "Let's mend the fence today," he says. Can't let stillness mean forgetting. You work together in companionable silence. The fence posts are old, some cracked near the base. You dig new holes, deeper this time. Add gravel for drainage. Tamp each one down with care. As you work, he tells you a story not loudly, not performatively, but like someone sharing a quiet memory. It's about a man he once knew who repaired fences for a living. But what he really did, Buckley says, was listen. People would hire him not just for his skill, but for the way he stood there and let them talk while he hammered and straightened and dug. They called him the confession carpenter. Buckley grins. You laugh. There's something comforting about manual labor with a hint of absurd wisdom baked into it. Your arms ache, but it's a satisfying ache. By the time the sun climbs high, you've replaced 5 posts and found a rhythm that feels like something more than just work. Later, while Buckley sharpens tools in the barn, you sit on the back porch steps with a canteen of cold water. You watch the clouds drift by slowly, unconcerned. You notice how time seems to dissolve when you're not measuring it. Then, a low call breaks the calm, a neighbor shouting across the field. You and Buckley exchange a glance. No panic, just a mutual curiosity. Turns out, a calf has wandered off. The neighbor's daughter left the gate unlatched. The calf is young, skittish. You volunteer to help search. The two of you split up, cutting through pastures thick with wet grass. You follow hoofprints, feel your socks dampen, hear the distant drone of cicadas building to a crescendo. Eventually, near the tree line, you spot it small, brown, wide-eyed. It startles, then bolts. You don't chase. Instead, you kneel. You remember something the way Buckley once coaxed a wild bird off the porch with a breadcrumb trail and an unwavering gaze. You do the same, with your tone gentle, low, patient. You speak softly, not expecting the calf to understand, but to feel that you mean no harm. Slowly, it stops, takes a few steps, then a few more. You reach for its halter. Its body trembles, but it doesn't flee. Good. You whisper, "You're okay." On the way back, the calf nudges your elbow. You smile, wondering how often humans do the same thing, run until someone meets them with stillness. When you return it to the pen, the neighbor thanks you with a peach pie. Buckley raises an eyebrow. "That's a proper reward," he says. Later that evening, after supper, you sit on the roof of the shed. It's not high, but just enough to feel like you've climbed above the noise. The sky is a canvas of deepening indigo. Bats dart overhead. Fireflies blink like shy thoughts. And in that quiet space between day and night, you remember a Zen saying Buckley once muttered while planting lettuce. When you realize nothing is lacking, the whole world belongs to you. You think about that now, and you wonder if the pie, the bowl, the rainwater, the calf, if all of it isn't just the universe's way of showing you what you already have. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic, just presence, just patience, just peace in the most unexpected shapes. And so, you lie back on the shed roof and let the stars find you. One by one, the next morning arrives slower than usual, filtered through a gauzy veil of mist. It hovers low over the corn, turning the golden stalks into ghosts. Every sound birdsong, creaking boards. The distant bark of a dog feels muted, like it's drifting up from beneath a quiet lake. You rub your arms and step outside, half expecting to see something mythical pass between the rows. Buckley's not by the barn. He's not in the kitchen or workshop either. For the first time since you arrived, he's gone without leaving a note. You wander through the fields, your boots brushing against dewy clover. The hush of the morning wraps around you like a second skin. Eventually, you spot him near the old irrigation ditch, crouched beside a stump with a pair of rusted shears. "What are you doing?" you call out gently. He looks up, eyes tired but kind, trimming back what doesn't belong. It's a small patch of overgrowth, thorny vines winding through a bed of wild mint. At first glance, it looks harmless, but underneath, it's choking the roots. "Sometimes the kindest thing," Buckley murmurs, "is a little cutting away." You kneel beside him and begin helping. Together, you work through the tangle, careful not to disturb the mint's fragile roots. He talks as you snip, not about the plants, but about a boy he once mentored, a quiet soul, the kind who'd apologize to ants. The boy had a habit of holding on to things, not just trinkets, but grudges, guilt, old conversations replayed like broken music. Buckley told him once, "Forgiveness isn't something you offer others. It's a pair of shears you use on your own mind." You nod and realize the weeds in your own thoughts have gone unchecked for some time. After the trimming, Buckley suggests walking to the bluff. It's farther than you've gone before, past the east ridge where the wheat gives way to dense oaks and the soil shifts beneath your steps. Along the way, he teaches you to recognize tree sounds, how poplar leaves flutter like applause, while the oak speaks in slow rustles, like an old man clearing his throat. Eventually, you reach the edge. The bluff looks out over a river that glistens like spilled silver. You sit, eat sandwiches, say little. And then Buckley tells you about a monk he once visited on a whim. The man had lived in solitude for decades, content in a thatched hut with only a bell, a bowl, and a copy of the Diamond Sutra. When Buckley asked what kept him from loneliness, the monk replied, "The wind, the squirrels, and the way tea cools." That monk, Buckley says, understood something essential, that stillness isn't silence. It's attention, refined. You sit a long time after that, watching the way the river moves, not fast, but with purpose. You wonder how many years it took to carve the valley below, one drop at a time. It reminds you of how Buckley moves through his days, not in rush or resistance, but as though each step matters equally. When you finally walk back to the farm, the sun has shifted. Shadows stretch long. Your legs ache, but your mind feels clearer, like something has been clipped free. That night, you sleep on the screened-in porch. Buckley insists on it. It's tradition, he says, when the weather gets this nice. You lie there, wrapped in a quilt, listening to the nighttime music of crickets and frogs. You think of the overgrowth, the way it looks harmless, until you see what it's doing beneath. You think of the monk and his tea, of the wind and the squirrels, and how, maybe, just maybe, the smallest things can save you if you're willing to notice them. Just before sleep takes you, a single firefly drifts in through the screen and lands on your wrist. It glows, then fades, then glows again, and you smile, letting it blink you into dreams. You wake to a rooster's call somewhere off in the distance, but it's not urgent. It's as if even the rooster knows today doesn't need to begin in a hurry. You stretch beneath the quilt, a slight morning breeze brushing across your face. The screened-in porch offers a slow awakening. You hear the soft shifting of stalks, the distant thump of hooves, and the creak of a rocking chair. Buckley's already there, of course, rocking slowly, a chipped mug of coffee in hand. "You sleep all right?" he asks, not turning his head. "Better than all right," you reply. Porch has a way of doing that. You watch as the sun rises, its golden fingers reaching across the cornfields, like it's smoothing down the world's wild hair. You sip coffee and say nothing for a long time. Then Buckley speaks again. Ever notice how some people carry their past like a sack of wet laundry? You nod. You've done it. "Thing is," he continues, "laundry's meant to be washed and dried, not lugged around." He taps the rim of his mug. "I had a neighbor once, fella named Harlan. Good man, strong back, kind eyes. But he couldn't let go of one bad harvest. Lost his crop to hail one year. Instead of starting over, he just froze. Took it personal, like the sky was punishing him. What happened to him, Buckley shrugs. Still lives out by the creek. but he never planted again. Just sits on the porch, talking about how life used to be. There's no cruelty in Buckley's voice, just a soft sadness. He forgot that the field forgets. Buckley adds, it's always ready for seeds. Even if you're not. That day, you work a little differently. When you plant, you do it with the quiet awareness that the ground doesn't judge your mistakes. When you water, you remember the value of showing up, no matter how you feel. And when you weed, you do it not in frustration, but as a gentle clearing. After lunch, Buckley asks you to help him with the barn beams. He doesn't need help. You can tell by how easily he lifts and sets the wood. But there's a lesson in there somewhere. Maybe in letting someone feel useful. Maybe in the rhythm of work that doesn't require talking. As you both lift a weathered beam into place, you notice a carving etched along its edge. What's this, you ask? He squints at it. Oh, that. One of the farm hands scratched it in years ago. Can't remember which one. It reads, not everything broken needs fixing. Some things just need holding. You stare at it a long time. Buckley doesn't explain it. Doesn't need to. That night, after dinner, you sit on the front steps and watch the stars come out. Fireflies dart above the stalks. Each blink a Morse code you'll never quite decode. Buckley hums a tune you don't recognize. Something old, something slow. Ever wonder why people look up when they think about their future? He asks. You glance upward. I guess because there's space up there. You say. He chuckles. Could be. Or maybe it's 'cause they're trying to rise above something. Silence. But down here, he says, pressing a hand to the earth, this is where things actually grow. You stay quiet. Let the moment do the talking. Later, in bed, you think about the field's forgetfulness, about the barn's hidden wisdom, about fireflies that blink without knowing who's watching. And for the first time in a long time, you feel like maybe you're allowed to start over too. The morning arrives with a crispness that you haven't quite felt before. The air seems lighter today, and the sun casts a brighter glow over the corn, as if it too has noticed something different in the atmosphere. It's not so much a change in the weather, but a shift in something deeper. You stretch on the porch, feeling the warmth of the quilt that Buckley loaned you still lingering on your skin. The day is ripe with possibility. You can't quite name it yet, but something tells you this will be a day of quiet revelation. Buckley, as always, is already awake. He's standing by the porch railing, his back straight and eyes scanning the horizon. It's a stillness about him that you begin to appreciate in ways you hadn't before. You're up early, you say, moving to join him. He doesn't look at you right away. Instead, he gestures to the open sky. Sun's just starting to do its thing. He says, with a hint of a smile, it's a good time for understanding. Understanding what you ask. Genuinely curious. Though you have an inkling, it won't be the kind of answer you can easily wrap your head around. Everything. Buckley answers, turning to face you. The sun doesn't ask permission to rise. It just rises. It doesn't worry if it'll burn too brightly or not enough. It simply is. He pauses and looks out over the land again. You can learn a lot from the sun if you're paying attention. It's not the first time Buckley has said something like that. But today, you hear it differently. It doesn't just float past you like background noise. It lands with weight. The day moves slowly, punctuated by small moments of work and quiet. Buckley lets you try your hand at the mill, teaching you the slow, deliberate process of grinding wheat. You watch as the grains pass through the stones, seeing their transformation into something finer. It's like watching time itself being ground down, one moment at a time. Later, he shows you how to prepare the dough for bread. The ingredients are simple, but the act of mixing them, kneading them, feels like something more. It's almost meditative, this act of combining elements to create something new. Something sustains you. As you work side by side, Buckley speaks again, this time about impermanence. Everything changes, he says, as he presses the dough with his hands. You don't get to hold on to it. That's the lesson. You can't keep the dough, but you can savor the bread. He lets the thought hang in the air between you for a moment before continuing. Sometimes people get stuck, trying to hold on to moments like they can trap time in their hands. But that's not how it works. Life's like this dough. It's always becoming, always transforming. You watch him, fascinated by how easily he accepts that the dough must rise, then bake, then be eaten. There's no expectation that it will last beyond its purpose. In the evening, Buckley takes you to a spot along the creek. The sun is low now, casting a golden hue across the water. The air smells of damp earth, of summer's last breath before the shift into fall. He points to the stream, where the water flows over smooth stones. See how the water flows, he asks. It's not trying to be anything. It just is. You follow the path of the water with your eyes. It moves steadily, without pause. It doesn't wonder what's next, or regret what's already passed. It just flows. What would happen if you could do that? Buckley asks. Flow like the water, you reply, unsure. Not like the water, he says. Be the water. Let everything flow, in and out, just as it is. You nod, but it takes a while to sink in. Being the water means more than simply going with the flow. It means relinquishing control. It means trusting in the process of life itself. You sit on the banks of the creek, feeling the wet grass beneath you. The evening sky darkens slowly, and the air grows cooler, but you're not in a hurry to leave. The quiet around you feels like it's whispering its own lessons, and you don't want to miss a single word. Later, as you walk back to the farm, the stars begin to appear, each one a small reminder of the vastness of the universe. You realize that you're part of something much bigger than yourself. You can't control the stars, the creek, or the changes of the seasons. All you can do is let them be. And somehow, in this acceptance, there's a peace you hadn't known before. The final days of summer descend softly, like a curtain drawn gently across the stage of a well-performed play. The cornfield hums with a deeper golden hue now, its once green energy now mature, almost wise. You've been here long enough to understand the field's rhythm, not just the planting and the growing, but the silence that follows when everything is nearly complete. Today, the farm feels quieter than usual. Not empty, just still. Buckley doesn't say much. Neither do you. Words aren't needed now. They'd only break the spell of this calm you've both earned. In the early morning, Buckley hands you a woven basket and gestures toward the edge of the field. Time to harvest, he says. The simple act of gathering corn becomes a meditation. You step carefully between rows, your hands learning the grain's weight and texture, the way it resists gently before surrendering. Each ear of corn feels like a small story in your palm. Sunlight, rain, patience, time. And in each story, there's a strange kind of tenderness. You start to notice more than just the corn, the faded wildflowers between the rows, the way insects hum, not to fill the silence, but to participate in it. You feel more part of the field than ever before. Not just a visitor, not just someone learning. Something in you now belongs to this land. At midday, Buckley brings out 2 bottles of water and sits with you under the shade of a gnarled sycamore. The leaves above tremble in the light breeze, and their shadows flicker across your legs. He wipes his brow with a bandana and says, "You've done good." The words are simple, almost casual, but they land heavy in your chest. "Thanks," you say. And for once, you don't deflect the compliment. You eat lunch in silence. Buckley shares a sandwich he made from the bread you both baked yesterday. It's crusty and soft and warm, even though it's not fresh. The flavor is made better by memory. You chew slowly, and you remember what he said about savoring the bread. Later in the afternoon, Buckley takes you to the barn's upper loft. From there, you can see the whole farm, the long furrows of harvested corn, the barn itself, weathered and perfect, and the wide sky that has been your constant teacher. "This is what I see every day," he tells you. Not just the land, but the work, the patience, the letting go. You nod, taking it all in. Buckley folds his arms and leans against a beam. Most people think Zen's about silence or stillness, but it's really about attention. Deep, clear attention to what's happening now. He turns to you, eyes steady. That corn. It wasn't in a hurry to grow. It didn't resist the rain or the sun. It just became. That's the lesson. And as you stand there, you realize you've been living the teaching all along. Not through words, or books, or ceremonies. Through movement, through waiting, through letting the corn teach you how to be alive. As dusk falls, Buckley gives you a quiet task, sweeping the porch. It seems mundane, even unnecessary. But as you hold the old wooden broom, feel the resistance of dust and leaves under its bristles, you understand this is the final test. Can you find presence, even in this? Can you let this small act be enough? And you can. You do. You sweep slowly, each stroke deliberate, not to finish quickly, but to fully participate in the moment. You breathe in the scent of old wood and dry air. You hear the distant rustling of corn, like whispered prayers. You let the rhythm of the broom settle your thoughts. Buckley sits quietly on the steps nearby, whittling a piece of cedar. The sun is almost gone now, bleeding into the horizon in soft oranges and deepening purples. After a long silence, he speaks. "You're not the same person who walked onto this farm." You nod, without pride or embarrassment. He's right. You've changed, not dramatically, not with fanfare, but subtly, like corn growing, like the stream flowing, like time teaching you without words, as the stars begin to bloom in the sky above. Buckley stands and pats your shoulder. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's the last day." And somehow, that doesn't sound like an end. It sounds like an invitation. That night, you lie in the small bed that now feels like home. The creaking of the house is familiar. The hum of crickets, steady. Your breathing slows. Not because you're tired, but because there's nothing to resist. And so you fall asleep, not chasing anything, not fearing what comes next, just resting, like a field after harvest. And now, the farm lies silent. The corn has been gathered. The fields have spoken in their rustling way, and summer itself exhales its final breath beneath the velvet curtain of twilight. You lie there, eyes gently closed, not in search of dreams, but as one who knows the dream has already unfolded right there. In golden rows, in quiet moments, in soft, sunlit labor. The lessons of Zen didn't arrive like thunder. They arrived in slow days and long silences. In the moment, you notice the sky shifting just slightly. In the patience of dirt. In the acceptance of a stream that never asked to be understood. Now, let everything fade. Let the field disappear. Let Buckley's voice drift into memory, like the scent of fresh bread in a kitchen grown quiet. You don't have to carry anything from here, not even the teachings, because what you've gained, stillness, softness, simple being, will carry you. So soften your breath, feel the gentle rise and fall. Like a breeze across golden stalks, feel the weight of your body sink deeper, as if becoming soil itself. Everything changes. That's the truth. But in this moment, right now, you are enough. No striving, no fixing, no rushing toward anything else. Just you, just this, just now. Let the night carry you the rest of the way. Let the whisper of cornfields follow you into sleep. Let the quiet lessons rest gently on your heart, like dust on a wooden floor, undisturbed. And when the sun rises again, whether you remember or not, something in you will know. You grew here. You let go here. And you became whole. Next, we arrive in ancient Alexandria, lanterns swaying in the harbor wind, sails rustling against wooden masts, and the aroma of saffron and cedar rising from crowded markets. The sea sighs behind you. Gold clinks from leather pouches at your side. Somewhere nearby, camels grunt beneath baskets of spice, glass beads, and pomegranate skins. But even among all this noise, this empire of exchange, something inside you is quiet, restless, as if a question is forming, too soft to hear. You walk the cobbled port, worn smooth by traders from 100 lands. Alexandria hums with ambition. Here, even silence has a price, and you, once a boy, with sand in your sandals, have grown into a merchant of serious gold. You know which timber floats best, which saffron is true, which eyes lie behind silk veils, and which ships will rot before they leave harbor. People trust your numbers more than their gods. Still, this morning, something is off. The ink on your ledger looks thicker than usual, almost oily. The coins in your pouch feel oddly warm, as if they've remembered too many hands. A woman hands you a bolt of linen, and for a moment, you forget what you're supposed to say. Fair weight, she offers. You nod, but your mind drifts to the way the wind moved just before sunrise, brushing your cheek like a whisper you couldn't quite catch. You buy more than you need. Saffron, frankincense, a small figurine of the Buddha. Why not the seller says it came by way of Bactria? Maybe that's true. Maybe nothing is. You sit in your usual corner of the bathhouse, where steam curls like thoughts from tired heads. Conversations swirl: who won the racing bet? Who married whom? Who got robbed by sea bandits posing as monks? The usual. You should laugh. You do. A little. But your eyes settle on the condensation sliding down the marble wall. One drop, then another. Merging, disappearing. It feels like a metaphor for something, but you're too tired to chase it. Back outside, the street buzzes again. Vendors shout over one another like philosophers who forgot they're selling honey cakes. You pass a child balancing on one leg, chanting nonsense to a bird. He doesn't ask you for coin. You give him some anyway. By the time your shadow stretches long behind you, you're carrying more goods than you meant to, and more thoughts than you care for. Maybe it's the heat, or the smell of old parchment in the air, or the ache in your chest that doesn't quite feel like illness. You turn down a narrow alley, one you've passed 100 times and never entered. A blue shutter creaks above. A fig tree leans toward the sun, ignoring the traffic below, and sitting there, cross-legged on a faded rug beside a bowl of olives, is a man who doesn't look like a seller, doesn't call to you, doesn't even look up. You stop. You don't know why. That's how it begins. The man at the olive rug doesn't speak. He doesn't motion for you to come closer, or push a price into your palm like the hawkers at the harbor. He just sits, cross-legged. A thin robe, no sandals, no sign, not even a basket of goods. Just a cracked ceramic bowl, filled with precisely 7 olives, arranged in a small circle around an empty space in the middle. You stand there longer than makes sense, long enough for a woman selling figs nearby to shoot you a look that says, "Are you buying or standing?" You shift your weight, clear your throat. And finally, because gold means nothing if not movement, you crouch down. You selling something, you ask. He looks up at last. His face is lined but not worn. His eyes the color of deep tea, steeped for years but never bitter. "I'm here," he says. "That's it? That's all." You glance at the olives. What about those? They're yours. If you're hungry. You raise an eyebrow. Generosity isn't unheard of in Alexandria. But it usually comes with strings, or favors, or future expectations disguised as smiles. Free food from a stranger, you say. That's either kindness or a scam. He shrugs. That depends on what you're hungry for. You sit. You don't mean to. But your legs fold beneath you, like they've been waiting for this moment longer than your mind has. The rug is frayed but surprisingly soft. The stone beneath is warm. He doesn't ask your name, doesn't care about your trade, doesn't launch into a sermon or a teaching or a myth. Instead, he asks, "Have you ever heard a silence so full it told you something?" You smile. "I've heard silence that meant I lost a bargain. That's about it." He smiles too. Not in mockery, not with superiority, just lightly. Like someone remembering a distant story that no longer needs telling. He picks up an olive and eats it slowly. The pit he places back in the center of the bowl. One empty place filled again. Silks. You offer spices. I've traded them since I was 12. My father too. I know weight. I know value. What I don't know is why I'm still restless. You've been exchanging things your whole life, he says. What have you ever let go of? You bristle. I don't cling to what I sell. No, he says, but you might cling to what you believe it makes you. You stare at the bowl. The olives are arranged like stars now. 7 small worlds in orbit. Are you a monk, you ask? No. Then what are you? He leans back. A mirror. You consider standing. This is too much, too vague. You prefer precision, scales, contracts, numbers that mean something. But you stay seated. The fig seller starts humming to herself. Someone down the alley knocks over a basket of lemons and curses in 3 languages. A cat slinks past, tail flicking like a question mark. And you sit. The sun lowers just slightly, painting the walls with amber. Your pouch of coins feels suddenly heavy at your side, like ballast in a ship no longer sailing. Tell me, you say, more softly than you intended. What did you give up? The man doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he offers you another olive. This one firm, dark, sharp. You eat it, and something in you loosens barely, but it's enough. Later, you don't remember standing, or leaving, or how far you walked. Only that you returned to your storeroom, sat with your back against a crate of indigo dye, and stared at the floor until night fell completely. The next morning, you returned to the alley, but the rug was gone, the bowl was gone. Only the faint smell of olives remained. You almost laughed, or wept, but instead, you sat in the empty spot and waited. Your customers came and went that day. You handled them, as always, fairly, profitably. But part of you was in that alley, beside a man who asked nothing, said little, and gave you more than you knew how to measure. That night, you dreamed of scales tipping themselves, of olives rolling into the sea, of coins melting into sand. You awoke with a hunger that bread couldn't answer. The next few days brought storms to the harbor. Trade slowed. Boats clustered like gossip at the docks. Merchants grew restless. You didn't mind. For the first time in years, you took a day without weighing a thing. You walked the streets not for business, but for questions. You weren't sure what you were looking for, only that the silence had followed you. And the more you stopped to notice, the louder it became. One afternoon, while tracing your usual supply route, you paused at an olive vendor you'd never used before. Her fingers were stained with oil, her eyes sharp. "These are new," you said. "Picked this morning," she replied. You bought a handful, ate one right there. The taste reminded you of something unnamable. "Did a man come by here?" you asked. "Sits on a rug. Doesn't sell anything." She paused, hand still in the basket. "You too," she said. "What do you mean?" "He sits in different alleys, never twice in the same place. My grandfather says he used to be a tax collector. My neighbor says he was once rich. Some say he's mad. Others say he's free." You nodded. "And you?" "I think he's an empty bowl," she said. "And people pour into him." You bought another handful. You walked for hours that day, not trying to find him, but trying to feel again what you'd felt beside him. Not clarity, not wisdom, just pause. A rare, sacred hesitation in the clamor of your usual world. Back at your storeroom, you stared at your books, all the columns, numbers, tallies, and debts. Each line a life, each ledger a lifeline. You opened a fresh scroll, and for the first time, you wrote no numbers. You drew 7 circles, 1 in the center, 6 around it. Then beside them, you wrote, "What am I trading?" and why you didn't need the answer yet. But for once, you had the right question. You don't tell anyone about the man on the rug. Not your fellow merchants at the harbor. Not the old bookseller who knows all the city's gossip. Not even the boy who sweeps your storeroom and occasionally asks you, wide-eyed, If all traders eventually go mad, some things lose meaning when spoken aloud. Some encounters feel too private, even if they happened in a street open to the sun and the sound of donkeys braying. Instead, you begin to change your route. Not obviously. You still show up at the harbor, still negotiate spice shipments and silk deliveries with the same measured charm. But you start walking home the long way, down alleys you used to ignore, past doors painted blue, cracks in the stone shaped like rivers. You begin to notice smells, cardamom, fresh ink, yesterday's rain baking off rooftops. And one evening, there he is again. This time he sits on a rug patterned with faded red lotus petals. Same robe, same bowl. This time filled with almonds. He looks up as you approach, as if he's been waiting without expectation. You don't say anything. You sit beside him. The city moves around you, not as a blur, but as a hum. Not something to chase, but something to listen to. He hands you an almond. This one tastes faintly of salt. How do you pick what to offer? You ask. What the day gives. He replies. Some days, nothing. Some days, apricots. Today, almonds. You nod. There's a pause. Not awkward, but steady. Like an oar stroke on calm water. Do you have a home, you ask? He gestures around. Sometimes the wind stays in one place. Sometimes it travels. You smile. That's not an answer. He smiles back. Then you're starting to listen properly. You find yourself laughing. Really laughing. Not the bark you use to seal a deal, or the polite chuckle merchants offer each other when discussing tariffs. This is lower, warmer, like dust shaken off your ribs. Do you have a family, you ask? More gently now. Yes, where he touches his chest. Here. That's very poetic. No, he says. It's practical. You fall silent. A beggar limps past, muttering a prayer to whichever god listens fastest. A child drops a basket of pomegranates, and red beads scatter over the stones like spilled blood, only softer. And then he says, "Let me ask you something." You nod. If you could trade one habit for one moment of stillness, what would it be? You pause. You could say worry, greed, the constant math in your mind. But instead, you say, my need to be right. He doesn't flinch, doesn't congratulate you, doesn't tell you it's noble. He simply says, that's a heavy coin. You nod. It is. And stillness doesn't give change. The alley darkens slightly, as if the sun tilted its head. Lamps are lit behind shutters. The city exhales. You wonder what it means to stop needing to be right, not just in arguments, but in your story of the world, in how you define success, in who you think you are. He breaks an almond and hands you half. You're not wrong, he says. You just might not be finished. That night, you dream again, but not of gold or caravans, or the trade routes etched across your mind like veins. You dream of a bowl with no bottom, into which everything falls, but nothing is lost. You reach into it, and your own name comes out, but it's softer, unfinished, still becoming. When you wake, the city is quiet, too quiet. The harbor has been closed. Rumors swirl, something about taxes, or a political squabble upriver, or a bad omen in the stars. Trade halts. Tensions rise. You should be panicking. You're not. Instead, you take a long walk and end up outside the temple of Serapis. You've never entered before. It always seemed ornamental. Religion was for wives and philosophers. But today, you step in. The air is cool. The incense is not aggressive but steady, like breath. You sit, not to pray, but to listen. There's a monk sweeping the floor, not the man from the rug, younger. His movements are slow, careful. Each stroke of the broom is deliberate, as if clearing not dust but memory. You watch him for a long time. When he notices you, he nods, doesn't ask questions, just nods. After a while, you say, "What are you learning?" He pauses mid-sweep, thinks, then says, "To do one thing at a time." That night, you return home and eat a simple meal. You write nothing in your ledgers. You light no lamp. And for the first time in years, you sleep without rehearsal. Days pass. The harbor reopens. The world rushes back in. But something in you has shifted. You find yourself weighing silks not by texture, but by how much air they seem to hold. You catch yourself noticing the breath of your customer when he's nervous, the twitch in a vendor's eye when they lie about the origin of saffron. You stop reacting to every stimulus like it's urgent, and so, profits change. Not because you're swindled or distracted, but because you're not feeding the need for more. You trade slower, but your trades last longer. You stop chasing reputation and start cultivating presence. And the strange thing, you begin to be known. People speak of you differently now. Not as the sharpest merchant, but the one who listens, the one who waits. One day, an apprentice from the Spice Guild comes to you in tears. She's lost a shipment. Her master will punish her. You don't give her silver. You give her a bowl, empty, and you say, "Sit. Just for a moment. Don't fix. Just sit." She does. And though her shoulders still shake, her breath steadies, you sit with her until the city calms. And you understand, in a way no scale ever taught you. Sometimes, the most generous trade is not to take, not even to give, but to be with. The weeks stretch, like fabric unspooled beneath your hands. The city remains alive, always shifting. Camels arrive with cinnamon from the Red Sea coast. Dyes from India stain the cloth markets violet and blue. The Nile floods, retreating in its age-old rhythm, leaving behind the thick black silt that makes life here possible. And yet, through all this, something inside you refuses to return to the old tempo. You wake earlier now, not to get ahead of the market, but to hear the silence before the city stirs. You sit by your window with a cup of warm barley milk and watch the first orange blush cross the eastern sky. It is a small ritual, but one you've come to guard with the same seriousness you once reserved for counting dinars. You don't seek out the man with the bowl. He comes when he comes. Once, on the fourth day of no-show, you feel a tug of worry. Was it all imagined? A trick of the summer heat? But then, without announcement, you round the corner near the perfume market, and there he is again, barefoot, bowl empty, a faint crescent of dirt beneath his fingernails. You're halfway into a smile when you notice something different. He's not alone. A small girl, maybe 6, is curled beside him, her head resting on his knee. Her eyes are closed, mouth slightly open in sleep. Her hair looks brushed with fingers, not combs. You sit a little distance away. He nods at you, a greeting not of formality, but of quiet recognition. "She's new," you ask softly. She's just passing through. He answers. You don't press. Instead, you both watch the flow of feet in the square. Sandals, bare soles, the rare flash of a Roman boot. After a while, he speaks again. Do you know the story of the river and the jar? You shake your head. He leans back against the wall, careful not to disturb the child. There was a woman who fetched water every day from the river. She had 2 jars. One was perfect. The other had a crack. Every time she returned, the cracked jar had lost half its water. You nod. Following. She used the same jars for years. The perfect jar boasted of its fullness. The cracked one apologized, over and over. You glance at the girl's feet. One heel is bruised. One day, he continues, the cracked jar finally said, you should throw me away. I'm useless. But the woman replied, have you not noticed the flowers blooming along one side of the path I planted seeds there? And you watered them every day. You breathe in through your nose. Which jar are you? He asks. You don't answer. Not because you don't know, but because suddenly, it doesn't matter. Later, you return to the marketplace, and something shifts in the way you trade. You're no longer trying to win. You're trying to listen. A woman selling dates haggles with you, sharp and fast, but instead of countering, you pause and say, you seem tired. She blinks. My son is sick. I didn't sleep. You nod, and you buy the dates at her price. She watches you go, uncertain whether she won or lost. That night, you pass a pair of sailors arguing about coin. You would have walked by once, but now you pause. You sit nearby and hum a tune under your breath, an old, wordless one your grandmother used to sing while slicing figs. Eventually, one sailor looks over, puzzled. What are you doing? You shrug, waiting for you to remember that silver isn't worth friendship. They scoff, but their voices drop. The argument dies with the next gust of wind. Back in your storeroom, something catches your eye. A bowl. Wooden. Slightly cracked. You don't remember buying it. You pick it up. Its grain swirls like smoke. It feels warm. And you remember, the bowl doesn't hold things. It reflects them. A week later, you receive news. Your older brother, the one who stayed behind in Tyre to tend to your family's dye shop, has died. A fever took him swiftly. You sit with the letter in your lap, hands motionless. You don't cry. Not at first. Instead, you remember his laugh loud and loose, like someone always standing too close to the edge of a dock. You remember how he told you not to come to Alexandria. Too big. He said, too loud. You'll disappear. You think of the irony now, how here, in the noise, you finally learned to hear. That night, you take a walk to the edge of the city, past the lighthouse, past the rows of prayer flags that flutter like tired breaths. You find a small rise in the earth. Sit cross-legged and talk to him. You tell him about the man with the bowl, the girl with sleep on her face, the cracked jar. You tell him about the stillness you've begun to know. And you cry not out of grief, but out of gratitude, because for the first time, you are not running from the weight of love. You let it land, soft, heavy, real. The next morning, you're back at the square. The man is there, alone again. No almonds, no girl, just the rug and the sun. You sit beside him. He says nothing. You say nothing. A pigeon lands near your feet, and you notice that in the silence, the world is not empty. It is full. A boy chases a hoop across the plaza. A woman fans herself with a lotus leaf. Someone drops a coin, and it rolls in a slow, lazy arc. You turn to the man. "How do you do it?" you ask. He raises an eyebrow. Wait without wanting. His eyes glint, amused. You just did. You lean back and exhale. For the first time in years, you feel yourself expand, not upward, not outward, but inward. Like a well dug deep enough to meet water. Not rain, not surface. Water from the belly of the earth. You don't need answers. You need presence. And that, finally, is something you can trade in. The days melt into each other now, like honey warmed by the Alexandrian sun. You find yourself less drawn to the market's chatter, less enchanted by the swirl of goods arriving from distant ports. Where once you sought advantage in every conversation, you now seek presence. Noticing the tone of a vendor's voice, the worn edge of a sailor's sleeve, the wind that pushes against your back as you walk home from the square. You are becoming fluent in silence. But even silence, like anything, can be misread. It's late afternoon when a familiar merchant approaches you, Tarek, the spice seller from the western stalls. His face is creased not with age, but ambition. Once, you admired that drive in him. Now, it makes your shoulders tense. "I've seen you talking to the beggar," he says. You raise an eyebrow. You've never heard him speak so quietly. And Tarek lowers his voice further. He's not what you think. He's not even from here. Doesn't pay taxes. Doesn't contribute to the district funds. You wait. He's dangerous, Tarek adds. These kinds of men, they distract good traders. Fill your head with illusions. You study Tarek for a moment. His belt buckle gleams. His tunic is freshly oiled. His breath smells faintly of dates and vinegar. Do you fear he'll take something from you, you ask? He laughs sharply. No, but he's taking something from you. You let that sit in the air. And then you smile. Not kindly, not unkindly. What if he's giving Tarek snorts and walks away, muttering something about wasted talent? You don't follow. You just watch his sandals disappear into the crowd, kicking up dust. That evening, you find the man with the bowl in an alley just off the square. A narrower place, cooler, quieter. He is painting. A strange sight. He holds a piece of cracked pottery in one hand and a stub of charcoal in the other. On the surface, he draws curved lines, almost calligraphy, but looser, messier, as if he's sketching wind. What is it, you ask? A feeling I can't speak, he says. You crouch beside him, watching his hand move. It's steady, certain. Is this art, you ask? He chuckles. Only to someone who doesn't need it to sell? You reach into your robe and pull out a folded scrap of paper. It's a purchase list from a week ago. You hand it to him. Draw one on this. He glances at you. Why, so I can remember? You say what you think for a second. That this city is full of things I've never understood. He nods. Draws something a single line. Sharp, then soft. Like a bird in the moment before flight. You stare at it. It's nothing. And somehow, everything. The next day, a sandstorm rolls in from the western desert. It's not violent, but it stains the sky a sickly yellow and makes every breath a little heavier. The streets quiet. Markets close early. The wind rattles signs and shutters. But you make your way to the square anyway. Your robe tied tightly around your face. You feel foolish, trudging through wind for no real reason. Until you see him. The man is standing, not sitting. His bowl is gone. His back is to the street, and he's facing a blank wall. He's drawing again, but this time with his fingers, smearing soot across the plaster. You step beside him. Why today he doesn't look at you? Because wind erases. You watch him paint, one stroke after another. A crude image appears: a house, a tree, a small figure standing alone between them. Is it you, you ask? No. Me? No. You tilt your head. Then who? He shrugs. Someone who never lived, but wanted to. That night, you dream of bowls, dozens of them, some full, some broken, some floating down the Nile like tiny boats. In the dream, you try to gather them, but every time you reach out, your hands pass through the water, and you wake not afraid, but curious, because even in the dream, you knew the bowls were never yours to keep. A week passes, then two. The man doesn't appear. You return to the square each day. You sit on the same rug where you used to. You bring nothing, offer nothing. And yet people begin to sit near you. A woman lays down her basket and sighs. A boy leans against the wall, silently spinning a copper coin between his fingers. A sailor nods at you and says, "You're quieter than most. That's why I like it here." You say nothing, but inside, something begins to shift. Not a lesson, a remembering. You walk the city like a monk with no monastery. Every alley becomes your cloister, every step a practice. You notice how many people speak without listening. You notice how many wounds walk upright, smiling. You notice how often you, too, once rushed to fill silence with noise. You stop doing that. One day, a man stops you in the street. He's dressed in fine linen, his hair oiled and tied. "You're the merchant, aren't you?" he asks. "Was, you say?" He frowns. "People say you've gone mad, that you threw away your accounts." You smile. "I've only traded them for something quieter." He shakes his head and mutters, "Fool." You don't disagree, but as you turn to go, you whisper not for him, but for yourself. Better a quiet fool than a loud prisoner. By the second month, something inside you loosens. You stop counting days. You forget which phase the moon is in. Instead, you mark time by breath, by cloud, by the taste of air before sunrise. You remember the story of the cracked jar again. And suddenly, it's not about being flawed. It's about being used, not by others, by life itself, to water something, maybe a garden, maybe a stranger, maybe your own reflection. Then one morning, you return to the square and find him there again. No bowl, no drawing, just him. He's leaning against a pillar, eyes half-lidded. You sit beside him, quietly. After a while, he speaks. "Have you learned to wait?" You nod, not perfectly, but patiently. He smiles. That's enough. Then he reaches into his robe and pulls out something wrapped in cloth. A bowl, not the one from before. This one is new, uncracked, deep, dark wood, smooth like the underside of a river stone. He hands it to you, for what you ask. He shrugs, for what you no longer need to carry. You hold the bowl. It is not heavy, but it holds weight. And as you sit there, under the slow-moving sky, pigeons cooing in the rafters above, and the scent of figs hanging in the warm air, you understand. You are not here to be full. You are here to be open, like the bowl, always receiving, always releasing, and always, no matter what the winds erase, ready to begin again. A bowl can only be useful when it is empty. You remember this now, not as a saying or a riddle, but as a truth that echoes through your body. You carry the wooden bowl with you everywhere, not in your hand, not to display, but tucked within your robe, resting quietly against your ribs. It isn't for food, nor for coins. It isn't for anything. It is for nothing. And that has made all the difference. Mornings become slow rituals. You wake just before the sun, when the sky blushes violet and the wind is still holding its breath. You light a stick of sandalwood incense from the temple quarter, not because you believe it carries prayers, but because it reminds you to pause. You sweep the threshold of your tiny home, even if it's already clean. You pour water slowly, listening to its rhythm as it strikes the basin. These small acts, they are not chores now. They are teachings. You once traded gold and silk and spices. You now trade attention for stillness. The profit is peace. One such morning, you walk the quiet streets and hear the city stretch. Vendors clink pots. Children squeal, chasing each other between alleyways. The scent of warm flatbread drifts through the air like a blessing. But instead of heading to the square, you follow a different pull toward the river. It's not far, but it feels like a journey. When you arrive, the Nile is wide and slow, its surface slick like oil. Birds move across it like paintbrushes across silk. You sit on the stone embankment, bowl in your lap, and watch. Just watch. An old fisherman notices you. His skin is cracked like driftwood, his robe patched with years of living. He grins. "You here to fish with no net?" he asks. You smile, only for what can't be caught. He chuckles and joins you, laying his rod beside him. You speak very little. He tells you about tides and reeds, about how the river remembers floods that even the pharaohs forgot. He says, "Sometimes I catch nothing and come home full." You nod, because you were empty to begin with. He tilts his head, considering, then shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe the river just gives me what I'm ready for. The next day, you bring bread. You offer half to the fisherman. He tears it silently and dips it in oil. You both eat like monks without hurry. When he finishes, he points to your bowl. You ever use it? You nod. Every day. For what? To remind me I don't need more. He taps his temple. That's the hard part, isn't it? You glance at the sky, unlearning what the world taught me to want. The old man smiles. Sounds like you're fishing after all. You spend more days by the river. You start noticing more than water. How the lilies lean toward shade just before noon. How dragonflies hover over certain currents as if they're tracing invisible maps. How the wind skips across the surface when no one is looking. These are not facts. These are feelings. And slowly, they begin to seep into you. You learn to let things pass. The boat with loud laughter pass. The cry of a child who dropped her doll pass. The sharp ache in your knee after sitting too long pass. Not ignored, just acknowledged, greeted, then released. One morning, the fisherman does not come, nor the next. You wait anyway. 3 days later, a younger man appears. His eyes are ringed with red. He passed. The boy says, not unkindly, "Yesterday?" You nod, say nothing. The boy gestures to the water. He said, "If I ever saw you, I should give you this." He reaches into his satchel and pulls out a small, carved hook. smooth, bone white. You hold it in your palm. He made it when he lost his first wife, the boy explains. Said it reminded him that even broken things can hold. You thank him, and he leaves. The hook is useless for fishing now, but you tie it to a cord and wear it around your neck, not as a memory, as a reminder that what we lose teaches us what we were holding too tightly. You go home and place the hook inside your bowl. It fits perfectly, and something inside you shifts again. That evening, the city seems louder. Vendors bicker, children cry. A man shouts about the price of pomegranates. And for a moment, you feel the old reflex rise, the need to fix, control, intervene. But then you breathe. You are not the silence against the noise. You are the silence within it. You move through the crowd like smoke. As the sun begins to fall, you find yourself in front of an old building you've passed 100 times. A school for young scribes. You never gave it much thought. Today, a boy sits outside, knees drawn to his chest, scribbling furiously on a piece of cracked slate. You sit beside him, quietly. After a while, he glances at you. I'm not good at it, he says. At what letters? The brush keeps slipping. You look at his slate. The lines are messy, slanted. You nod. That's how rivers start. He blinks. What crooked? Confused. Before they learn how to bend. He stares at you for a long time, then slowly begins again. You sit with him until the street lamps flicker on. When he leaves, he glances back. You're strange, he says. You smile. So is water. But it carves mountains. Later that night, you return home. The city has dimmed. Even the moon seems quieter. You place the bowl beside your sleeping mat. The hook still rests inside. Then you lie down, hands over your chest, feeling your breath like the soft rise and fall of a boat. And just before sleep carries you, you hear it, the sound of stillness. It doesn't shout. It hums low and deep, like a truth you've always known. A bowl doesn't need to be filled. It only needs to be held. And you are learning slowly, gently how to hold. You dream of marketplaces, not the old ones. The clamor and chatter of Alexandria, but quieter ones, shaded by cypress trees, tucked between winding paths in a distant mountain village. In the dream, you carry your wooden bowl, and no one asks what it's worth. Instead, they bow gently as you pass, as if recognizing something familiar in your walk or in your silence. When you wake, the feeling lingers not of having traveled somewhere new, but of remembering somewhere you've always belonged. You decide, one morning, to climb. There's a ridge just beyond the edge of the city. Most ignore it too steep, too rocky. But the old monk had once gestured to it with a knowing smile, saying, that's where the wind whispers before the world can talk over it. So, you pack a few figs, a water skin, and your bowl, and you go. The path is uneven, the stones loose. At first, your breath comes hard, legs protesting, but then something shifts. Your stride finds rhythm. With each step, a thought falls away. The errand you didn't run gone. The memory of the deal you regretted from years ago, gone. The echo of the merchant's tongue still hiding inside you, always ready to bargain, even in silence gone too. Halfway up, you rest beneath a date palm. You eat slowly, the sweetness of the figs making your teeth ache just enough to remind you of living. A bird lands on the branch above. You both sit in the hush together, Then you climb again. The air thins, turns crisper. Eventually, you reach a small outcropping where the wind moves freely, like it's been waiting for someone to listen. From here, you see everything rooftops like chess squares. Tiny people moving like ants, with errands and intentions. You sit, you listen, you place the bowl before you on the rock, and you let it catch the wind. Not literally, of course, but somehow it holds the moment. And then, without planning to, you speak aloud. What would it mean? You whisper, to be of use without needing to be used. The wind answers not with words, but with a soft gust that presses your robe to your skin like an embrace. You stay until the stars begin to bloom in the sky. Then you climb down, not faster, not slower, just quieter. That night, you write a letter to no one. Or maybe to the you that once stood in the market counting coins faster than you counted breaths. You write today, I climbed a hill and returned emptier than when I left. And for the first time, I didn't want to fill myself again. You leave the letter unsealed and slide it under your mat. It's not meant to be read again. It's meant to be written. The next morning, you find yourself drawn to the temple district, not to pray, to sweep. You borrow a broom from a novice monk and begin clearing dust from the stone steps. You don't ask permission. You don't explain. You just sweep. And something about it, about the repetition, the gentle rhythm of bristles against stone settles you. An old nun approaches. She watches silently for a while, then nods and says, "Dust never minds being moved." You glance up. Nor should we. She chuckles. "You're not a monk." "No." "Then why sweep, you consider?" "Because the ground deserves to feel clean too." She places a piece of dried mango in your hand and walks off. The sweetness is humbling. Later, as you walk home, a woman in the alley stops you. "Merchant," she says. "You haven't been called that in weeks." You turn. "I heard you now carry silence in a bowl." You smile. "It spills often?" She chuckles, eyes curious. "Could you spare some?" You hold up the bowl. It's empty. Of course. She leans forward, peers in, and something about the way her face softens tells you she saw it too. Not with her eyes, with her need. You say nothing. She nods. And both of you go your separate ways. The weeks stretch like golden thread. You spend time sitting beside old people, listening to their memories wander. You help a potter carry water from the well, and in return, he lets you shape a lump of clay. It collapses on the wheel, but he only shrugs and says, "That's the best kind, teaches faster." You walk past vendors and don't feel their call tug at your sleeve. You no longer need to buy meaning. It's being given freely, everywhere, like breath, like birdsong. Then one evening, just as the sun is kissing the city goodbye, a commotion stirs in the square. You approach out of curiosity, not duty. A young boy has broken a jar of olives. The merchant is yelling. The child trembles. People begin to shout. Blame buzzes through the crowd like flies. You watch. You feel the pull to intervene, the old reflex. But instead, you step forward and place your wooden bowl at the boy's feet. The olives that remain are gently rolled in. You lift the bowl and offer it to the merchant. He blinks, stunned into stillness. The boy clutches your robe, and the moment passes, just like that. Later, the boy finds you again. He tugs your sleeve, not with fear, but with awe. You didn't say anything, he says. No need. You reply. He looks at the bowl. It helped. You nod, because it held something instead of demanding something. He frowns, working the thought in his mouth like a seed. Then softly, can I sit with you sometime? You smile. You already are. That night, you fall asleep without lighting incense. There's no ritual required, just breath and the cool air and the rhythm of your heart now beating in time with something older than memory. And for the first time in a long while, you don't dream of gold. You dream of hands. Hands letting go. Hands opening. Hands cupping air, as if to say, look how full nothing can be. The sun rises not with fanfare, but with humility. A soft orange kiss over Alexandria's rooftops, brushing the city awake not all at once, but in gentle pulses, like breath returning to a body. You rise with it, the wooden bowl now as familiar to your hand as the pulse at your wrist. And something else is different this morning. Not the air, though it's cooler. Not your body, though it aches less. No, the shift is in your eyes. You no longer look out at the city like a map to be conquered. You see it now like a story unfolding, and you are no longer the author, but the attentive reader. That quiet joy, that's contentment, and it's earned. Word spreads, not fast like gossip, but steadily, like the way water knows its way downhill. People begin to leave small offerings outside your door. A basket of apricots, a folded note, a bit of thread dyed saffron. They don't knock, they don't wait, and you don't chase them down to return favors. That game, the endless tit for tat, is over. Instead, you gather the gifts, whisper thanks to no one in particular, and place them in a clay jar beneath your window. That becomes your new altar. Nothing formal, just gratitude you can see. You start visiting the river again, not as a merchant looking for trade routes, or as a man looking for answers. You go simply because water moves, and something in you longs to remember how. Each day, you sit by the same stone outcropping. Each day, the river is different. One morning, you watch a heron step into the shallows, its movement so slow, they almost disappear. One leg lifts, pauses, touches the water, like a lover testing the temperature. You hold your breath. It holds your stillness. Then it stabs into the water, pulls out a silver fish, and in a blink, it's gone. You laugh. You say aloud, "That bird has better timing than I ever had." A fisherman nearby nods, because he's not waiting for a better deal. Touché. Universe. Touché. There are moments now when you speak aloud to the bowl. You know it's odd, but it's become a kind of journal. You say things like, "Today, I saw a child stop to watch ants carry a crumb twice their size. That's strength we never praise." Or, "I saw a man slap his donkey and then kiss his prayer beads. And I didn't judge him. I just felt sad. And sometimes am I really changing? Or just slowing down enough to see who I always was?" The bowl never answers, which is, frankly, exactly what you need. One day, while returning from the river, you find a young man waiting outside your door. He's awkward, clearly rehearsed something. "Are you?" he starts, the merchant who stopped being one. You shrug. "I'm a man who started sweeping." He smiles. "My teacher says gold is a distraction, but I don't know how to live without wanting it." You don't answer right away. Instead, you open your door, set the bowl down between you, and ask, "What do you want from gold?" He blinks. "Security," he says. "Freedom." "And what do you want from freedom?" He frowns. "Peace." You tap the bowl. Try starting there. You begin gathering people. Not with flyers or sermons, just presence. At first, it's the curious ones, the apprentices tired of shouting merchants, the widows who miss the rhythm of shared days, the weary ones who've prayed to every god and still feel hollow. They don't call you teacher. You don't want that. But they come. You sit in a circle with them, under the sycamore tree near the southern wall. Sometimes you share stories, like the one about the man who tried to weigh silence and failed because it kept floating away. Sometimes you just listen. Sometimes you all sit without speaking for an hour. And still, everyone says they learned something. You suppose that's what learning looks like when ego steps aside. A new woman appears one evening. She speaks with a clipped accent, robes too clean for a city dweller. She says nothing for 3 gatherings. Then suddenly, she asks, "How do you forgive someone who never apologizes?" No one answers. You look at the bowl. You tap its rim. Then you say, "Stop holding your breath." She tilts her head. What you nod. That's what resentment is. Breath you've held too long. Exhale. Let yourself have fresh air again. She cries. No one judges. The child in the circle offers her half a fig. No words. Just enough sweetness to hold her steady. Not all days are profound. Some days are just sweeping steps and washing robes and nodding at neighbors and saying, "Yes, the tomatoes are finally ripe." But even that feels like a prayer now, because you're no longer rushing toward a moment of enlightenment. You're allowing the ordinary to wake you up, again and again. There's a day when a camel collapses in the street. Too much sun, not enough water. A crowd gathers, arguing. The owner yells at the animal. Children point. You step forward, place your bowl under its nose. Not to water it, you have no water, but as a gesture. Stillness for the suffering. The camel shudders, eyes flickering. You sit beside it. Then you begin humming. Just barely. A low, steady sound. It's not magic. The camel doesn't spring up, but the yelling stops. The tension bleeds out of the air. Eventually, someone brings a jug, another a tarp, a third offers dates. You leave before it recovers. Your job was not to heal it, just to not walk past. And then comes the letter, carried by a young runner, hands smudged with ink. It reads, "The elder monk who once took your gold bowl sends his greetings. He says, your silence is louder now than your bargaining ever was. And he invites you to visit, not as a pupil, but as a companion." You fold the letter slowly. You don't rush. Later that evening, under the sycamore, someone asks, "Where does peace go when we aren't watching?" You smile. Nowhere. We just forget the sound it makes. You hold the bowl up to your ear, like a child with a seashell, and everyone leans in listening for the ocean in your emptiness. The road to the monastery is no longer strange. It has been years, many. In fact, since you last walked its curves, but it feels like returning to the inner walls of your own ribcage. The bends are familiar, the rocks still stubborn beneath your sandals, and the birds, well, they've outlived your ambitions and likely your excuses, too. You don't take a cart. You don't bring a gift. You carry only your robes, a bit of bread, and the same wooden bowl, its rim smoothed further by the simple repetition of being held without demand. No merchant's pack, no gold. It's strange how lightness makes you move slower, not out of fatigue but reverence. The monastery hasn't changed much. The paint is chipped in more places. The stone steps are smoother, but the silence, it's exactly as you remember. Heavy, alive, more a presence than an absence. The elder monk is waiting in the courtyard. His beard is even longer now, a silver stream that moves in the breeze. He doesn't smile when he sees you. He laughs, the kind of laugh that leaks from someone who spent a decade learning how not to take people too seriously, and then forgot how to take anything seriously at all. I half expected you'd send another bowl, he says. You place it in his palm without a word. He turns it over in his hand like a father might inspect a toy his child has clearly loved. So, he says softly, you traded gold for stillness. Tell me, was it a fair exchange? You nod, and I still feel like I came out ahead. You stay the weak, not because you seek teaching, but because something ancient in you wanted to sit where your old self broke open. You rise at dawn with the monks, not out of obligation, but joy. You sweep with them. You eat rice. You carry water. You sit in meditation beneath the same crooked cypress that once made you itch with boredom. And this time, no itch, only breath. Only the sound of birds who don't ask whether it's enough. On the fourth day, a young monk approaches you. He's maybe 17, full of fidgeting limbs and a voice he hasn't grown into. He bows deeply, then blurts, "How do you keep wanting less?" You smile at him, remembering how much energy it takes to ask the right question at the wrong time. By noticing how heavy wanting is, he frowns. But if I stop wanting, won't I lose momentum? You tap your bowl once, the sound echoing lightly across the stone. There's no momentum in a circle, only returning. He looks confused. That's fine. Some lessons are seeds. They sprout later, often in mud. That night, the elder monk invites you to sit beside him on the southern terrace. He doesn't offer tea, just air. The two of you sit for what feels like 100 years. Then he says, "Do you remember your first day here?" You do. He continues, "You wanted to buy answers. I think you'd have traded your sandals for a shortcut to wisdom." You chuckle. "I'd have given up my name." He nods. "And now you look up at the stars. I think I'd give up even the question." He closes his eyes. "Then you're finally worth listening to." The next morning, you rise earlier than usual. Before the bell, before the wind, you walk the garden path alone. Every step is a ceremony now, not because you're trying to be holy, but because you're not trying to be anything at all. A leaf falls in front of you, landing perfectly in the bowl you've been carrying. You laugh not because it's profound, but because it's absurd. The universe never needed your permission to teach. It was only ever waiting for you to stop shouting over it. You return to Alexandria, not because the monastery rejected you, but because silence is not a souvenir, it's a state of attention. And you no longer need stillness to be wrapped in stone walls to hear it. You arrive just before sunset. The city smells of roasted cumin, sea salt, and distant rain. It smells like now. People greet you like they would a returning brother. Not a teacher, not a guru, just someone whose eyes have stopped darting around the room. You resume sweeping. Someone leaves a poem at your door. Another asks if you'd consider blessing a newborn. You say yes. Then ask the mother to hold the child up to your wooden bowl, as if to collect the first breath of stillness like a lullaby in wood. The boy who once asked about wanting returns. Older now. He's wearing different clothes, but the restlessness in his spine is the same. He asks if you remember him. You don't lie. No. But I remember your question. He sits beside you, no longer asking, just watching the light move across your bowl. Later, he says, I haven't stopped wanting. You shrug. Then don't. Just stop thinking you're supposed to. He lets out a breath so long, it becomes a kind of music. There's a market festival that year, one of the loud ones. Trumpets, figs on sticks, bad poetry shouted from carts. You walk through it without flinching. A man offers to sell you a golden bowl, inlaid with lapis and lined with silk. You glance at it, then at your own. You thank him, but say, I already have the one that taught me not to buy it. He looks confused. That's fine. Some wisdom is meant to ricochet around in someone's head before it lands. There's a whisper now, one you can feel gathering in the streets. They call you the still merchant. Some say you've gone mad. Others claim you have visions. You correct no one, because truth doesn't need a defense, and misunderstanding is just another form of time. Besides, your only real job now is sweeping. And when someone thanks you for your words, you say that wasn't me. That was the silence between your thoughts. One evening, you dream of the desert again. Only this time, it's not empty. There's a boy sitting under a date palm. Your younger self. He's holding coins, counting, frowning. You walk past him. He doesn't recognize you, and that, somehow, feels perfect. The ocean calls you back, not the crashing kind, loud and foaming, but the one that sighs more than it roars. The sea near the monastery's southern coast, quiet and full of long pauses between waves. You remember the walk to it from years ago, barefoot on sand, your feet sinking just enough to remind you everything leaves an impression, but not forever. This time, you go not to ask or seek, but to listen. It's just after dawn when you arrive. The world is still gray-blue, like it hasn't decided what mood it wants to be in yet. You sit on a flat stone, your bowl placed beside you, filled not with rice or coins, but a single pebble, a gift from a child on the road who told you it was magic. You believed her because what isn't? The waves come and go. No announcements, no apologies. They are what they are. Like you now. Later that day, you're walking the narrow path above the cliffs when you see a man arguing with a boy. The man is red-faced, pointing, frustrated. The boy, thin and quiet, just nods. But you see the silent storm behind his eyes, the same kind you once had. You don't intervene like a teacher. You simply pause. Wait. The man eventually turns to you and says he refuses to work, says he's waiting for the right task. You nod. Then give him the one you're avoiding. The man opens his mouth to argue, then stops. His eyes narrow. He's thinking now, not reacting. That's something. The boy says nothing, but his eyes meet yours. You smile. Not because you're proud, but because you see yourself. And it feels like looking in a mirror from a life you've forgiven. At the port, a former trader recognizes you. He's older now, heavier, but his voice is the same, loud, soaked in spices and half regret. I heard you quit the market, he says. You nod. It kept selling what I no longer needed. He squints at your bowl. Still carrying that old thing. You turn it slowly in your hands. Yes. It doesn't carry me anymore, though. He laughs. That's the strangest answer I've heard all week. You grin. Then you've had a peaceful week. He invites you to dinner. You accept, not because you're hungry, but because he remembers something kind about you. And that's worth feeding. That evening, you share a table with his family. His daughter is studying poetry. His son wants to build boats. You ask the girl what her favorite word is. She says ephemeral. You whisper it back to her like it's a prayer. She smiles. Hearing it in your voice, you ask the boy, what kind of boat? Small ones, he says. Ones that turn easily. You tell him that's wisdom. Most kings die without learning. Their father watches all this with a puzzled look. He says, you used to talk only about prophets. Now you talk like a wind. You pour him a little tea. I was always the wind. You say, I just thought I was the sail. Weeks pass, maybe more. A man comes knocking. He says there's unrest in the mountains. A group of monks sent to help build a school haven't returned. He says the local guide fled. Fears grew. You say nothing at first, just listen. Then, without a word, you wrap your robes tighter and begin walking. The path to the mountains is not gentle. It twists. It bites. It humbles. You're not as young as before, and your knees remind you of it with every rise in elevation. But your breath is steady, not because your body is strong, but because your resistance is weak. At a small village near the ridge, you meet an old woman who has seen the monks. She offers a piece of barley bread and a cup of boiled water. You sit with her for an hour, not to gain anything, just to match her pace. She says the monks passed through 2 weeks ago, quiet, determined, but the rains had made the river rise. You know what that means. You find the camp 2 days later. Tents flattened, no footprints, only a torn robe snagged on a branch. But near the river's edge, you see something stone markers, newly built, 5 in total. You bow, not because of death, but because of devotion. Even their last act was to leave a trace of stillness. You gather what remains, some prayer beads, a half-burnt scroll, and sit by the river for a long while. You don't cry, not because you don't feel loss, but because you've accepted its rhythm. The river takes, the river gives. Neither is a betrayal. On the walk back down, you meet a boy fishing. He offers you a worm, mistaking you for a poor traveler. You laugh and say, I already caught what I came for. He blinks, then asks, a fish? You shake your head. A moment. He stares at you, utterly confused. That's fine. Moments don't explain themselves. By the time you return to Alexandria, your legs are worn, your robes torn, but your bowl is intact. You sit again in the courtyard, sweep again, teach again, but not by talking, by showing. When a child asks, what is the sound of peace? You let them hold the bowl and sit beside them in silence. After a few minutes, they whisper, oh. You smile. That's enough. One night, the stars are so clear, they seem like holes poked through the fabric of the world. You lie back on the roof of your home, the city asleep beneath you, and listen, not for voices, not for meaning, just for the gentle hum of being. You whisper into the sky, Was this the trade all along, gold for this? And though no voice answers, your breath does. Slow, full, yes. This, exactly this. You rise with the bells, not temple bells, but the subtle clangs from the fishmongers hauling in nets down at the harbor. Alexandria breathes slowly at this hour, still draped in its veil of morning mist. The streets haven't yet filled with sandals and shouting, and that's when you walk. When the world is still deciding what kind of day it wants to be. A neighbor waves from a balcony. She used to frown at your bare feet and quiet greetings, but now she smiles first. Sometimes people need to see a still pond 100 times before they stop tossing stones. You pass a fountain where once you preached commerce. You used to gesture here, loud and fast, showing coins in your palm and convincing strangers of their value. Now you sit on the edge of the same fountain and simply observe. A child asks if you're waiting for something. You answer, just waiting until I stop waiting. He nods. The way only children can like, they understand everything and nothing all at once. He tosses a stone into the water. You both watch the ripples fade. Later, in the sun-warmed alley behind the old spice trader's stall, you meet a group of pilgrims, dusty, wide-eyed, clutching scrolls and asking too many questions at once. They want to know the quickest path to the mountain monastery. You answer with a question. Are you trying to reach a place or a peace? One frowns, another scoffs. The youngest looks down at her feet, unsure. You tell her. The trail that leads to yourself is longer, but you carry fewer burdens. She doesn't respond, but that evening, she sits near your doorway, watching you mend a torn sleeve. Quietly. That's the best answer. At the lotus pond in the temple courtyard, the abbot approaches you. He has a letter sealed with green wax, bearing the mark of an old patron from your merchant days. You recognize it instantly. You used to write hundreds of these, in that same expensive ink that smells faintly of myrrh. You open it. Inside, an invitation. A wealthy lord wants to offer you a seat at his table to discuss the balance between spiritual and material wealth. There's a clause he'll donate generously to your monastery if you attend. You smile, because even this is just another ripple. And like all ripples, it will fade. Still, you go. Not because you crave gold, but because sometimes stillness must be brought into noise. The estate is enormous gardens, manicured like stage sets, servants fluttering like nervous butterflies. The Lord is plump with comfort, wrapped in silk and scented with worry. He greets you as master. You nod and say, "Call me bowl-bearer. The rest is too heavy. Dinner is lavish, plates with 10 spices. A peacock egg cracked at the table just for effect. You take only rice." The cook looks offended. You nod respectfully to her. She did not ask to cook for your ego. The conversation begins predictably. Can one be spiritual and wealthy? The Lord asks, leaning forward, seeking validation or perhaps absolution. You stir your rice, then answer one can be wet and hold fire, but only for a moment. He laughs, unsure if you jest. He asks if the Buddha would have accepted a palace. You reply, he accepted the world, but didn't let it keep him. The Lord frowns. Then how do I give without being praised for it? You pause. That's the first true question he's asked. You say, give like rain. It falls, then disappears into the soil. He sits back, quiet. For once, that night, you don't sleep at the estate, though a room is offered. You walk out, beneath hanging lanterns and stars that blink like eyes trying to stay open. On your way home, you pass a woman feeding stray cats. She offers you a piece of bread. You accept, bowing as if she'd handed you the whole moon. She asks no questions. You feel lighter for it. The next morning, a merchant visits you at the temple. She's young, nervous. Her fingers twitch as she lays out her wares silks, dyes, tiny carved animals. You ask why she's here. She says she dreams of giving up the market. You ask what she wants instead. She answers, stillness. But I don't know how to sell it. You chuckle. You can't sell stillness, but you can offer it by being it. She thinks for a long time, then begins packing up her things. Before she leaves behind a wooden fox. For your travels, she says. You place it on the windowsill, where it catches both sunlight and shadow. A perfect place for a fox. You spend an afternoon with the scroll keeper, reorganizing texts that no longer know their own order. One scroll, brittle with age, speaks of a king who traded his throne for a monk's robe. Another, newer, describes a child who mistook a mirror for the moon. You think both stories are the same, told backward. The scroll keeper sneezes and asks, "Does knowledge ever make peace?" You answer, "Only if it forgets its knowledge." He nods like he understands, then goes right back to alphabetizing. You leave him to it. As the season turns, leaves curl and drop like quiet thoughts you no longer need to think. One morning, you sweep the steps and find a turtle at your door. No one else sees it. It watches you. You bow. It turns and vanishes into the garden. You take that as a message, not from heaven, but from the earth. At sunset, the sky bruises pink and gold, and the fishermen return, dragging nets heavy with silver, soaked in patience. You help one pull in the last haul. He grunts, recognizes you. "Didn't you used to sell spices?" he asks. "Yes." You reply. He squints. "Now you sweep and carry a bowl?" You nod. Same ingredients, different recipe. He laughs loud and long, slaps your shoulder. "Whatever you're doing," he says, "it smells better." You thank him. It does. Back at the temple, a new student has arrived. He's too young, too eager, too sure. You ask why he came? He said, "To become empty." You hand him your bowl. "Then carry this until you see what's inside." He stares, puzzled, then shrugs, then walks off with it. You smile. It begins again, as it always must. The wind changes that night. You feel it even before the chimes begin to rattle along the monastery's roof beams. It carries the scent of something older than trade routes, salt from the sea, crushed lavender from distant foothills, and the sharp tang of iron dust from the desert winds. You step outside before dawn. The moon, not quite full, hangs low like a fading coin that has passed through too many hands. It reminds you of something the old potter once said. The moon isn't full because it wants to be. It simply stops resisting. At the edge of the temple grounds, a group of children are chasing shadows, pretending they're monsters. One stops when she sees you. "Do shadows ever catch you?" she asks. "Only if you run." You say. She giggles and vanishes back into the game, her shadow following like a curious little sibling. Inside the meditation hall, A new bell has been hung, brought from a ruined shrine in the mountains. The abbot says it hasn't rung in over a century, yet its tone still holds. You strike it softly, and the sound echoes through your ribs like a forgotten name. A student asks why you struck it. You say, "Because I needed to remember that silence has a shape. He doesn't understand." That's all right. Understanding is overrated. Later, you sit with the tea master. She doesn't talk much. Her silence is not the absence of words, but the presence of space. She pours tea like a painter working with mist and memory. Today, she adds a leaf from a ginkgo tree, yellow and stubborn, surviving despite storms. You sip. The flavor is strange, bitter, then suddenly sweet. She notices your expression. "That's the past," she says. "It always tastes like that when steeped properly." You nod. "And the future?" She pours more, still boiling. That afternoon, a caravan arrives from India, travelers robed in saffron, with eyes that have stared into deserts long enough to mistake heat for hope. They bring spices, poems, and a relic, a shard of what is claimed to be the Buddha's begging bowl. They present it with reverence. The abbot bows, but doesn't touch it. You ask if the Buddha ever needed a bowl that survived him. One of the travelers grins. "No. But we needed something to carry the story. You accept that. Stories are the lightest and heaviest of all possessions." The caravan stays overnight, and in the quiet of evening, you sit with one of the poets. He speaks in metaphors, his voice soft as moss. He tells of a prince who lost his crown in a river and refused to retrieve it, claiming it belongs to the current now. You counter with a tale of a woman who gave away her last grain of rice and found her belly full for 7 days. The poet laughs. Your stories are always hungry. You smile. Yours are always thirsty. He hands you a scroll with ink so faint, you must tilt it toward firelight to read. It says, "Only what you do not cling to cannot be stolen." You fold the scroll, tuck it into your sleeve, not because you need it, but because you want to forget it naturally. As the moon climbs higher, the young monk returns, still carrying your bowl. He's dusty, his eyes tired, lips chapped. "I've walked every path," he says. "Spoken to beggars, sailors, thieves, dancers. I even gave the bowl to a madman who used it to scoop up wind." "Did you find anything?" you ask. He opens the bowl. It's empty. You both stare into it. You nod. Perfect. He doesn't know whether to laugh or weep. You hand him a spoon. "Now," you say, "feed others." Days pass. The monastery garden begins to wither, not from neglect, but from time. The gardener, now stooped with age, asks if you'll help bury the last of the lotus bulbs. You dig beside him, the soil warm and loose. "Do you think they'll bloom again?" he asks. "No," you say. "They'll rest." He nods. Sometimes that's enough. You think of your former shop, the gold scales gathering dust. You think of the sandstorm in the market, the girl with the wooden fox, the merchant who wanted to sell stillness. You plant the last bulb, pat the dirt flat, let it be. One evening, as twilight seeps into the sky like ink from a cracked bottle, you walk along the rooftops carefully, barefoot, with the balance of someone who's forgotten how to fall. From here, the city glows dimly, fires and hearths, candles and shrines, lanterns strung like distant memories. You see a couple arguing. You see an old man rocking in a chair, whispering to a cat that doesn't exist. You see a group of teenagers lighting incense without knowing why. Every act is a prayer, whether or not they realize it. You whisper, "Let all beings be at peace." A breeze carries the words. You don't ask where. In the final moments of night, you meet the abbot in the orchard. He's trimming the peach trees, humming something that doesn't belong to any language. He hands you a knife. You take it, not to cut, but to carry. There's a ritual that must be performed, nothing formal, nothing sacred, just the slicing of an overripe fruit. You do it slowly, letting the juice run down your fingers. You both eat in silence. Afterward, he asks, "Have you traded everything yet?" You nod. "All but one thing." "What's that?" You touch your chest. "The merchant." He smiles, then walks away. As the first call to prayer echoes from the city's edge, you return to your room. You place the bowl, now polished from hundreds of hands, on the windowsill beside the wooden fox and the faded scroll. A moth lands on the rim. You don't move, because this stillness is the last thing left to give. The next morning, you wake before the sun, stirred not by sound, but by the light of something just beginning. Not dawn, not even twilight, something between shadow and shimmer. A pale hour when the world is unfinished, and the sky still wonders what color to wear. Your room is quiet. You've always preferred it that way. No door, just a linen curtain that sways when the breeze breathes through. Outside, the sand is cool underfoot. You step into it like stepping back into a thought you left behind mid-sentence. The fox figurine sits where you placed it last night. Its paint is fading, ears chipped. Still, it looks amused, or perhaps that's just the light. You pick it up and walk to the garden. There, the gardener's apprentice is drawing water from the well. She looks at you, and then at the fox. "I thought you gave that away." You smile. "I did." She frowns, confused. "That's the funny thing about giving," you say. "Sometimes it returns in forms you didn't expect." She shrugs and returns to her task. Uninterested in philosophy before breakfast. After a small bowl of rice and a sip of jasmine tea, you visit the scriptorium. You haven't entered this room in weeks, not since you copied down the passage about the merchant who mistook silence for failure. The ink still stains your fingers from that day. The young scribe is here, hunched over a scroll, whispering as he writes. "Are you transcribing a sutra?" you ask. He shakes his head. "A dream." You sit beside him. "What happens in it?" He stops writing. A monk loses his voice. Everyone thinks it's a punishment, but he's the only one who can still hear the world clearly. You raise an eyebrow? Then what, he never speaks again? People think he's wise, but he's just listening. You nod. Maybe that's wisdom. He shrugs and continues writing. You leave him with the sound of the brush scratching paper, which is somehow louder than your footsteps. Later, in the temple kitchen, you help the cook prepare pickled radishes. "Cut them thin," he says, "like moments." He tells you that food prepared without attention always tastes of forgetting. You slice in silence, watching the white roots curl under the blade like ribbons of time. Afterward, you both eat quietly in the courtyard. A stray cat lingers nearby, hoping for scraps. You toss it a piece. It sniffs and walks away. Even the hungry are choosy. The cook laughs. You glance up at the clouds. They're moving faster than usual today, as if carrying messages across borders without stopping to ask permission. At midday, a delegation arrives from a coastal monastery. Their robes are blue-gray, dyed from sea kelp. They carry no gifts, only stories. One of them, a monk with hands scarred from coral reefs, sits beside you under a fig tree. "We once lost a scroll in a storm," he says, "carried it for years, and in one wave, it was gone." You ask, "Did you rewrite it?" He shakes his head. "We recited what we could remember. The rest we trusted the wind to deliver." You both laugh softly, not because it's funny, but because grief sometimes borrows the sound of laughter. That evening, during chanting, you notice a visitor in the back row, an elderly woman with hair the color of storm clouds. She chants, but not the same syllables. Her rhythm is off. Still, there's sincerity in her voice, like a lullaby, hummed in a different language. Afterward, she approaches you. "I followed your story," she says. "From the market. You remember her barely. She once tried to sell you a stone that she claimed was part of the Buddhist path. You declined. She smiled and said, 'You'll carry it anyway.' Now she pulls something from her pouch. It's not a stone, it's a coin. Gold, but not shiny. A coin from your old stall. I kept it," she says. "Thought it might still matter." You hold it. It's warm from her palm. "I don't need it anymore," she adds. You hesitate, then drop it into the bowl on your windowsill. The moth lands on it, briefly. Nothing needs to be said. That night, you visit the edge of the monastery grounds, where the desert begins. The sand here is soft, barely able to hold shape. Footsteps fade, behind you, almost as soon as they form. You sit beneath a thorn tree. Its branches are bare, but alive. You lean against its trunk and close your eyes. No lesson comes. No memory rises. No voice interrupts. Just stillness. Not the kind you sought in the beginning. Not absence or silence or sleep, but a kind of presence so complete it doesn't need attention. You breathe in. The wind is gentle now. Even the stars seem to whisper more softly. You whisper to the tree, though it never asked. I've traded gold for stillness. But stillness, it seems, has given me everything back, just differently. At the far side of the dunes, lights shimmer, caravan lanterns, perhaps, or perhaps something else. You rise, brush sand from your robe, and walk slowly back toward the monastery. A bell chimes once, then again, and with each step, you feel lighter. Not because you've lost something, but because you've stopped trying to carry what was never yours. The bell you heard last night rings again at dawn, though this time it's no illusion. It's the large bronze one above the east tower, usually rung only when something begins or ends. You rise before the sun again, but your movements are slower now, measured not out of fatigue, but awareness. Every breath, every shift in your muscles, even the sensation of cool stone beneath your feet, all of it feels deliberate, as if life itself were bowing low to meet you. You don't know what the bell means, but you're no longer the type to chase answers with a net. You simply go. In the courtyard, the monks have gathered like reeds around a still pond. They are silent, facing the abbot, who stands barefoot with his palms together. Next to him, on a low table, rests a tiny scroll, no longer than a candle. You recognize it immediately. It's the story of the merchant who traded his wealth for stillness. Your story, or at least the shape of it. The abbot looks up, meets your eyes. "You will read it," he says, aloud. You hesitate. The parchment is thin. Your voice is thinner, but still, you take it in hand. The monks shift to make space for you. The garden goes quiet. Even the birds pause their morning songs. And so, you read. The story unfolds in its own time. The words aren't profound, they never were. But something about speaking them aloud, in this place, among these people, transforms the air. You reach the final line, and in stillness, he discovered what no coin could buy himself. A gust of wind lifts the parchment from your hands. It tumbles upward, rolls like a wave, and disappears over the monastery wall. No one moves to catch it. The abbot bows. Now it is written in the wind. You nod, tears unshed. Later, the gardener brings you a small clay bowl filled with river pebbles. She says they're for the fox. He deserves a home. She shrugs. You build a tiny altar beneath a fig tree, using the pebbles to ring the base. The fox sits proudly in the center, watching passers-by with a mischievous calm. Somewhere along the wall, someone has carved what is given never truly leaves. You run your fingers across the inscription. The stone feels like skin. In the scriptorium, the boy is finishing his dream scroll. You sit beside him, watching the ink dry. I added an ending, he says. The monk who couldn't speak, he meets someone who listens. You smile. Good. That's how we begin again. He places a blank scroll beside the first one. Want to help me write another? You nod. Together, you dip your brushes into black ink. You don't plan. You don't outline. You just begin, stroke by stroke. A new story forms. You notice your handwriting has changed. Softer, rounder, as if it no longer needs to defend itself. That night, the cook surprises you with lentil stew and dried apricots. Why now, you ask? He grins. Because you finally stopped asking. You both eat quietly, and the flavor feels fuller than ever. Not because of spices, but because of presence. You remember how meals used to taste in the market quick, greasy, urgent. This is a bowl of time. At the far edge of the monastery, a visitor arrives. A merchant, like you once were, though his robes are clean and his sandals too stiff. He sets up a tiny stall, but no one comes. You watch from a distance. He adjusts his wares, clears his throat, waves. Nothing. You walk over. What do you sell, you ask? He frowns. Whatever people want, that's a dangerous inventory. He chuckles nervously. And you gesture toward the garden. I used to trade too. Now I just listen. He squints. To what? You smile. Everything. As the sun dips below the date palms, you walk the perimeter of the monastery one final time. Every crack in the wall, every worn tile, every patch of moss is a chapter. You pause near the old market stall, now just a wooden frame with no fabric. You touch it gently, like an old friend's shoulder. In your pouch, you still carry one small thing, not a coin, not a relic, but a folded piece of parchment. It reads, he gave up trading not to lose the world, but to hold it without grasping. You leave it tucked in the folds of the fox's altar. Someone will find it. Or not. It doesn't matter. In the meditation hall, the lamps flicker. You sit on your cushion, spine tall, heart soft. The bell rings again, not once, but 3 times. A beginning, a middle, an end. You close your eyes and breathe. Inhale the scent of sand and ink. Exhale the echo of coins falling into silence. The final night unfolds without fanfare. No bells, no scrolls, no mysterious visitors or flickering omens, just a hush, the kind that stretches out long enough for your thoughts to soften into background hums. The moon climbs slowly over the tiled rooftops, casting soft lines across the walkway outside your quarters. You don't need light to navigate anymore. Your feet seem to know where to go before your mind catches up. You step outside, passing through the corridor, and each step feels like it's dissolving something old names, old worries, old selves. At the end of the path, the abbot is seated on a low stone bench beneath a ginkgo tree, a thin shawl draped around his shoulders like a cloud that forgot to keep floating. He nods, as if expecting you. "You've worn through your sandals," he says softly. You glance down. The soles are cracked, the leather straps loose. You hadn't noticed. "It means you walked far enough," he adds, without looking at you. You sit beside him, no words exchanged for a while. Just the creak of the tree branches, the sighing wind, and the small rhythmic beat of your breath syncing with his. Then, he speaks again. "You arrived here carrying a sack full of gold and a head full of storm. Now you carry neither. You consider arguing, if only to honor the pattern. But no, he's right. You feel lighter than the scrolls in the scriptorium. Even your memories don't drag anymore. They float beside you like lanterns in water. Stillness, the abbot says, isn't the absence of movement. It's the absence of resistance. You don't answer. You're too busy feeling the truth of it. Morning comes unnoticed. There's no dramatic farewell, no procession, no chant. You place your bundle small now, just a cloth with a few figs and a pebble from the fox altar by the gates. You're not leaving forever, but you are moving on. Before stepping through, you pause. The merchant once believed that value was defined by exchange what you gave, what you got. But here, nothing was exchanged, only revealed. You don't walk away from the monastery. You walk into the next part of the path. You take the river road south. The path is narrow, lined with reeds and silent birds. Occasionally, a stone monk appears along the way, small carved statues left by previous pilgrims. You bow to each one. In a clearing, you meet a group of children playing with painted pebbles, giggling as they trade imaginary treasures. One holds a smooth black stone and insists it can make dreams sweeter. You believe her. You sit, share your figs, and tell a story not of gold or market deals, but of a man who once bargained for silence and ended up finding everything. Their eyes widen, not because the story is magic, but because someone took the time to share it. As you stand to leave, one child tugs your sleeve. What did the man do with all his stillness? You kneel and whisper. He gave it away. Your feet carry you onward. Hills roll past. Trees become sparser. Villages appear, then disappear. At a small rest house near a stream, an old potter invites you to watch her work. She spins the wheel with a kind of ease that reminds you of the abbot's words, not absence of movement, but of resistance. Her fingers shape the clay, like breath forming a thought. You stay for days. She asks no questions. You offer no explanations. Just the silent company of two people who understand that everything takes the shape of the space it's given. You keep moving. One evening, a sandstorm pushes you into an abandoned temple. Inside, someone has etched verses into the walls. You can't read all of them, but one line stands clear. What comes gently, stays longest. You set your bundle down. Sleep comes easy. In the dream, the fox returns not to lead you, not to test you, but to curl up at your feet like an old memory content to rest. On the road, again, you begin to notice something strange. People greet you differently, not with curiosity or suspicion or awe, but with calm. They sense it in you. The stillness, it travels ahead of you now. You don't need to speak much. Sometimes, people just sit beside you and say nothing at all. And that's the gift. That's the trade. They offer a story, a silence, a shared breath. You offer the space where that story can settle. In a small town by the coast, a young monk approaches you as you watch the tide pull back from the sand. "You used to be a merchant," he says. "Did you lose your fortune?" You shake your head. "I traded it." You reply, "For what couldn't be counted?" He nods slowly. "Did it make you happy?" You laugh, not unkindly. "No. It made me real." That night, the sea speaks in a language you finally understand, not words, but patterns, not meaning, but movement. The tide goes out, the moon rises, and you finally sleep, not to escape, but to arrive. And now, dear listener, the story softens like the sea smoothing a shell with each returning wave. You are no longer the one who chased coin for purpose, nor the voice that had to fill every silence with sound. You are the quiet beneath the current, the breath beneath the breath. You came here tonight not by chance, but by rhythm, guided, perhaps, by the very same stillness the merchant sought through winding alleys and ancient walls. So before you drift away completely, take one final moment. Feel the weight of your body as it rests gently wherever you are. The mattress beneath you, like the earth itself, holding you without condition. Your breath so simple now, so subtle like waves that forgot how to crash and instead just whisper. Let your fingers loosen. Let your jaw soften. Let your thoughts unravel like thread, not torn, but released. You are not lost. You are not late. You are exactly where you were always meant to be, in the pause between questions, in the hush after the bell. Maybe tomorrow you will walk again, through temples or marketplaces, through cities or solitude. But tonight, you are simply here, and that is enough. So let go now. Let the story fold around you like a soft blanket of wind and memory. Let your heart, for once, not try to solve or fix or strive, but simply beat. Steady, gentle, true. You've earned the stillness. Sleep well, fellow traveler. You've made it home.